the CentreSteer podcast, a podcast by, for, and about Land Rover owners.
Welcome to the CentreSteer podcast number 142 for January of 2025. CentreSteer is a monthly podcast for Land Rover enthusiasts, hobbyists, and owners around the world. I'm John Costage, and joining me are fellow owners and enthusiasts Harold and Morgan. Welcome.
Thanks for having me back.
Harold, are you going to step in?
You expect me to say something?
Yes, welcome.
Oh.
And welcome back to the podcast.
Okay.
And Dixon is aboard something called a ship in the Caribbean as we record. He's actually had messaged me today from the island of Bonaire, which is off the coast of South America in Colombia. And he sent along pictures of a functioning Freeland. It was in the 2002 to 2005 range. It's a 5-door, and he says it's a diesel. So it's actually functioning.
See, that's why.
Yeah, I was going to say, perhaps the diesel engine is why it still functions.
And they probably don't go through the heat and cold cycles, causing them to need to replace windshields as often either.
And he also sent us some pictures of a 130.
130 high cap,
Yes.
correct?
It was a 130 high cap. You are correct.
Which, mind you, most of the 130s are. That's
Point.
more common than anything else.
So that's where Dixon is, and he'll hopefully return back to us next month. Our guest this month is a Land Rover enthusiast, founder of the New Hampshire Club, Dork, and now
Those dorks.
and now fellow podcaster Ned Crystal. Ned embraces his hobbies and activities with passion and enthusiasm. Ned is an avid off-roader, overlander, and Star Wars fanatic.
And just nutty enough to think that, hey, I should do a podcast.
He's working to become an I-4 WDTA certified instructor. He named and styled his Defender after a stormtrooper. And he's beginning to podcast to help novice 4x4 owners become part of the overlanding community. And during our conversation, if you notice a change in Ned's audio, it's because his microphone failed, and it was about 3/4 of the way through our conversation. See if you notice any change in the audio quality. And thanks to our Patreon and Buy Me a Tea subscribers for their support. Patreon supporters receive bonus content, including 10 questions, our Land Rover-oriented question and answer lightning round. We did one with Ned. We'll post that up in a few days. Now it's time for the North American Events Club calendar with Dixon. But Dixon is, as I said, in the Caribbean. So let's talk about what's coming up here. ANARC has officially listed the 3 events that ANARC will be part of for 2025. There's the Stewards Training, which will take place in New Mexico. That's going to be March 26th through 30th of 2025. That is pretty much by invitation only, in the sense that you have to be a member of an ANARC club in order to register for the event. If you're interested, please get in touch with your club. If you are not in an ANARC club in North America, ask your club to become part of an ANARC, and hopefully you can get a slot to attend the Stewards Training. It's limited to 40 people. As of this moment, we have about half of those slots registered.
Pretty cool event with some really talented people teaching it.
Yeah, absolutely, Harold. You're absolutely correct. And the expectation here is you will take that knowledge back to your clubs and start proper ways of doing recovery, orienteering, overlanding, and trail etiquette.
And it's in the part of New Mexico that's still radioactive, so seeing at night shouldn't be a problem.
That's true. It's very close to Alamogordo, Truth or Consequences. Then OVLR birthday party, that's the Ottawa Valley Land Rover Club, August 22nd through 24th, will take place up in McDonald's Corners in Ontario. And then September 25th through the 28th, that is the last weekend of September, will be the Mid-Atlantic Rally put on by Rove, and that will take place in Arvonia, Virginia, which is Pearls Pond. And our understanding is they're going to greatly increase the number of camping and registration openings for Rove. I've heard 200, which is, I think, double what they were doing last year.
So it might actually take 45 minutes to sell out.
That's right, instead of 20 minutes. Yeah, I don't know when registration will open up. If it's anything like the previous years, it will be in August. Last year, they were going to do it August 1st, but a lot of people were at the picnic that was up in Minnesota. And they
AKA the North Star Rally.
waited till that was over before opening up. I suspect that may happen again this year. All right, now let's get into the news, shall we? It's back a new year, and we have a good bit of news to cover. First up is JLR reports strong wholesales growth in third quarter. Wholesales for the third quarter of their fiscal year 25 were 104,427 units. That was up 3% versus the previous quarter. Wholesale volumes for JLR's three best-selling models for the quarter were up 22% for the Range Rover, 17% for the Range Rover Sport, and 13% for the Defender compared to this quarter of the previous year. Retail sales were 106,000 units, which was down 3% versus the previous quarter. Comparing the prior year, wholesale volumes were higher in North America, up 44%, up 6% in Europe, down 38% in China, down 17% in the UK, down 1% in the rest of the world, the other overseas markets. Wholesale volumes for the financial year to date were 289,485. which is down 1% compared to the previous year. They're still doing well, even though slight downtick in their volume.
It's weird to think that their sales are up given all the places where it's down.
I wonder if that's part of the move to the upscale luxury models.
Yeah, and it could be, it also might be they're working through their backlog, which means that they get the full sales price instead of just reservation fees and such.
Yeah, no mention of the backlog I saw this time.
That might also account for wholesale numbers too.
And moving on, JLR to invest $80 million to meet demand for custom luxury car colors. JLR will invest £65 million, which is $80 million, to expand its luxury paint service in the UK and Slovakia to meet increased demand for personalized cars from high-end clients. The luxury car maker, they're now calling him a luxury car maker, joins rivals Rolls-Royce, which is part of BMW, in trying to cash in on the trend. JLR will more than double the capacity of its SV bespoke paint matching service, allowing Range Rover SV clients to paint their cars in any color, including those matching their private jets or yachts.
Or their handbags or whatever. So are they going to just stop painting anything a regular color now and just offer everything as custom or special edition?
For a fee.
Just seems like everything's a special edition these days. Well, yeah, they make more money on those, but it seems like they're not going to make regular Rovers anymore.
What does Rolls-Royce do? Do they have standard colors or do they all personalized?
Yeah, I don't know. I know more about what Rolls-Royce did 100 years ago. It's a little different now.
Yes. I would suspect, if anything, Harold, the way you're talking, probably be a Range Rover would be all personalized, and probably down from there, Defender Disco would be just some personalization.
Once they're all special, none of them are.
Right.
And next, JLR Classics appoints new director DOMINIC ELMS. DOMINIC takes leadership of the Jaguar Land Rover Classic, following 10 years with JLR and 18 years in the automotive industry. His appointment adds momentum to an exciting trajectory as new ventures accelerate at Coventry-based Jaguar Land Rover Classic. Charged with leading the Classics team development of the classic business for JLR, DOMINIC looks to deliver even greater opportunity for clients to experience the unrivaled history of some of the world's most iconic brands. So, new guy at the helm of Classics.
I hope that's a very good thing. We'll see. I like to see more Land Rovers on the road. These are not inexpensive old Land Rovers, but they're going to be well done and supported by Land Rover.
Classics, sir, please. Classics.
A
Yes.
good restoration costs money no matter who does it.
I think this is them getting into that game.
Yeah, no, absolutely it is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's
and
good to see
redefining how that game is played by now you've got a restoration with a factory pedigree. It's a different level.
And it will be really interesting in the long run to see how popular it becomes for Land Rover, because it's possible they may end up wanting to remanufacture parts or something like that. And
wouldn't that be nice?
Yeah, I'm not going to hold my breath.
Bring back some of the unobtainium.
Right, exactly. And especially for the classics, manufacturers are getting fewer.
They have those blueprints and schematics they can pull out of the archives, unlike anybody else that's doing it as a third party.
And or they could commission top shelf suppliers to get things remanufactured or go back to the original supplier that had supplied them in the first, because a lot of the stuff was bought from vendors. They could go back to that game as well so that they don't have to shop at Britpart, and by extension, we don't either.
I think overall, this is a good sign and makes me feel a little better about the name change and how they seemingly turned their back on the heritage community back in the 75th.
That's just it. If they're in the game of restoring them, it only benefits the rest of us who have old ones that we're trying to restore because of what Morgan said, parts availability.
Yeah, general know-how. If there's somebody working at Land Rover Classic that now knows how to do the restorations, those are more people who know how to do the restorations and know how everything goes together and comes apart and gets rebuilt, which is yet another thing along with the parts that we're losing is the knowledge.
And next up, Chinese Land Rover Defender clone with huge range that costs 43,000 pounds less. The Chinese automaker Chery has seemingly come up with a cheaper clone of the Defender. Whilst a basic Defender 90 currently costs UK buyers 58,000 pounds, motorists in China can get behind the wheel of this lookalike for around 14,000 pounds, which is 43,000 pounds less.
It's also a third of the cost.
And what they don't talk about, of course, is its capability, its underpinnings, the transmission,
Actually, no,
the engine.
It's closer to a quarter of the cost.
It's basically just a outside exterior clone. You don't know about the underpinnings and its capabilities. But still, there's some competition.
As Yoda would say, begun the Clone Wars have.
Precisely. It looks oddly like a weird combination of a Defender and the new Land Cruiser.
To me, it looks like a new Defender with a Rivian front end on it.
Ooh, yep, I can totally see that.
Yeah. This looks a little bit like a Lincoln with that upright light in the middle there that reminds me of that Lincoln emblem that they would have.
And the grill with all the little vertical bars. That's classic 60s Lincoln.
It's interesting being that it's from Chery, who is a partner of Land Rover.
See if that helps the partnership or whether it doesn't help the partnership.
Sales are not doing as well in China. Maybe a little more affordable option is necessary.
Next up, Land Rover vehicles are recalled to fix faulty backup cameras. JLRs were calling 33,000 vehicles in 2 separate recalls because their display screens may go blank. These vehicles don't comply with the U.S. federal motor vehicle standards regarding backup cameras, basically because they don't work. The recall vehicles include certain 2023 Disco Sports, 23-24 Defenders, 23 Evokes, and 19 through 20 Jag XE sedans. On the Land Rovers, the issue is due to faulty software, which dealers will update for free, and it's a bad cable on the Jags.
Oh.
So there you go.
Wow, surprisingly, it's not bad wiring in the Land Rovers.
Still might be too. Don't they probably use similar?
What I'm thinking is that they'll do this software upgrade, and that will enable the faulty cable to fail properly.
That's good. Next, the electric Land Rover Defender is a very long way off. The chief commercial officer of JLR said that the Land Rover Defender isn't likely to see an electrified variant within this current generation. Rather, packaging concerns have forced Land Rover to push back the electric Defender while design teams work on a new model that will accommodate an electric drivetrain. Quoting him, electrifying the current L663 on its D7X platform is not what we want. The L663 is brilliant at what it does, and we do have a 4-cylinder plug-in hybrid version already available, but it's not easy to find the extra space you need within the chassis for batteries, given the axle packaging and capability.
I think Harold has, and I have discussed some of the options they have there. Hub motors remove all axle space required.
You still got suspension, but you would free up some space in the middle where the diff used to be, definitely. But yeah, I think the issue isn't so much that they have nowhere to put the batteries. It's just they can't fit enough batteries to make something that big and heavy have any kind of useful range.
I have seen some engineering reviews where the battery can actually provide some structural support for a vehicle, it's very likely that they could find a way to fit a battery in, just not with the structure that was built for a standard petrol drivetrain, ICE drivetrain.
Wasn't this D7X platform built to include electrification? Or am I confusing that with a different?
Well, Land Rover has used that electrification term a lot over the years, and it really only is a requirement that there's some electrical power.
Yeah.
So it's very likely that this platform was intended for electrification in exactly what they stated, the hybrid solution.
Gotcha.
Yeah, you can fit enough battery. The PHEV doesn't need as much battery, so you can definitely do that. And maybe they fully intended to go full battery electric with it, but figured out that it just doesn't have the capacity.
Very likely. Next, the next generation Range Rover Velar will get a more intelligent driving experience. This is the electric successor to the Velar. Won't use a version of the MLA architecture, which is the modular longitudinal architecture platform that will underpin the full-size Range Rover Electric. Instead, it will sit on the firm's EMA platform. The firm said in 2023, the first car to make use of this technology would be a medium-size modern luxury SUV that will go into production in 2025. The first model will be from the Range Rover family. After initial plans to make the EMA a multi-fuel platform, it confirmed to be electric only. Here we go. The EMA architecture will heavily use over-the-air updates focusing on features such as evolving advanced driver assistance systems, nonstop access to media streaming, and exchanging data between JLR and EMA-based cars, such as the new Velar, for additional service and maintenance prompts to reduce costs for the client and JLR. What? I understand the words, but someone needs to explain all that to me.
Yeah, I hope the bandwidth is really good. Otherwise, you'll be tempted not to use the turn signals for fear your movie will stall.
Yeah.
Right.
So it looks like they're using the EMA architecture, and it's supposed to be all electric, but I guess that D7 platform, which the Defender's on, is probably not, as we talked, really ready for full electric. Anyway, I guess.
And the what was the EML?
EMA.
Or EMA. Yeah, that's their new platform. So this is, I believe, the first vehicle to use the EMA platform.
And it was designed around being electrified.
Yeah,
right.
They were previously using the MLA, which is not the D7. The D7, I think, is even older than, okay.
But the D7 is also a longitudinal architecture as well. It's just not the modular longitudinal architecture.
Right.
It's a dedicated longitudinal architecture. Wonder if that's what the D is, not a Defender, probably.
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't think of that. Maybe. Let's delve into this for a moment. EMA architecture will heavily use over-the-air updates. Okay, I get that. Focusing on features such as evolving advanced driver assistance systems. Okay, so I think that's keeping the car on the road. Okay, updating your terrain response, probably. Non-stop access to media streaming.
No. Again, like I said, if the bandwidth isn't good, your movie might stall on you while you're making a turn, and that wouldn't be good.
Yeah, that's
because watching the movie is the important part of driving.
Yeah, and you don't want your movie to drop out and go to a blank screen when you're trying to watch it while using your reverse camera.
Oh, that's true. While you're off-road.
Yeah.
Right.
Next here is exchanging data between JLR and EMA-based cars, such as the Velar, for additional service and maintenance prompts to reduce costs for the client and JLR.
It sounds like an opportunity to take your data as well as give you data.
Yes, this is definitely...
It sounds like a privacy thing there.
This is trying to upsell on the privacy loss there.
We notice you use your brakes a lot. Why don't you come in and get our premium pads that we'll sell you?
Yeah, you need to upgrade to the high-end ceramic brake pads.
I hope you guys are
carbon
wrong.
fiber rims.
And if they're monitoring the suspension loads, they could maybe start sending you ads for diet plans so that you can lose some weight.
I hope you guys are wrong, but I think you might be right.
It's a scary world we live in.
Indeed.
It is.
And anytime I see sharing data and sharing information, I just get more nervous.
All right, let's
Yes.
get back into some goodness. This is from Motor Trend. This is the 2025 Land Rover SUV lineup, and they did a nice summary of what's happening for 2025 for Land Rover.
And the picture of the Defender looks remarkably hippo-like.
Exactly correct, sir. You're right.
So I'm sure John is thrilled with that.
It's fantastic. As Land Rover prepares its first all-electric models, it introduces new and potentially significant sub-brand to its lineup, Octa. With a name inspired by diamonds, Octa treatment is applied first to the Defender and increases the SUV's ability to sling dirt and tear up pavement. It's the 2025 Land Rover SUV model we're most excited about, according to Motor Trend, and let's look at the rest of the lineup. Next is the 2025 Disco Sport. The smallest Land Rover SUV receives new packages and reshuffled features. Silicon silver exterior paint is discontinued. Black painted brake calipers become available in place of red, and rather than being available as standalone option, interior ambient lighting, 2-zone automatic climate control, and enhanced air filtration are now bundled together within the comfort package.
Comfort package includes a heater.
It's worth noting, because I saw this in another article, that the Disco Sport is now 11 years old without any significant.
They want to save some money on their development budget, but it also harkens back to a time when a Range Rover could last 25 years before it had to be replaced by a new model.
That's fair. And they have a pros and cons here for each model, and that's where, the con now a decade old. The Evoque is next, and for 2024, the Evoque saw a simplification of its trim structure along with infotainment system, standard wireless charging pad, and new paint and wheel options. The 2025 Evoque carries over with slight revisions to available paint colors as the most notable change. And that's it. That's all they say.
Again, they're discontinuing ordinary paint. You have to pay for special paint.
That's right. And the cons here, engine feels weak and unrefined. Too many touch controls. Drab interior design and materials. I guess that's also not received an update in quite a while.
No, it's just reductive.
Nice try, Jerry.
There's that word again.
Nice try. Next up is the Discovery. All 2025 Discovery models are now equipped with standard front fog lights. Hakuba Silver paint is discontinued. Heated second row seats are no longer offered as a standalone option. Instead are added to the climate control package. Likewise, the head-up display and Wi-Fi hotspots are now included in the technology package. And again, a solar-reducing windshield, interior ambient lighting, center console refrigerator, 4-zone climate control, cabin air purification, and power tailgate are discontinued as individual options and instead bundled into the comfort package. Really, no major changes to the Disco.
No, you just have to buy a whole package of 14 things you don't want to get the one that you do.
Or you don't get the one you do want because it doesn't come in the package you need.
My favorite con they have here is forever in the shadow of the Defender. True.
But again, that's part of the legacy of the Discovery because it started out forever in the shadow of the Range Rover. Now it's in the shadow of the Defender. It's got to be in the shadow of something.
Next is the 2025 Defender. The most off-road capable model becomes more off-road capable than ever with the arrival of the Octa. Think of the Octa as Land Rover's equivalent of the Ford Bronco Raptor, fitting the SUV with beefy all-terrain tires, high-tech suspension, huge engine to increase its trail prowess. Land Rover will also offer the Defender Octa with big wheels, all-season tires for improved road-going performance. Elsewhere in the Defender lineup, the 130 model can now be had as a second-row captain's chairs. Matte paint protection film becomes available, and updates are made to the available option packages. And we'll have more about the Octa coming up because there's a couple of articles on that and videos. Nothing to mention the pros and cons. We next have the Velar. 2025 Velar gains standard proximity locking and unlocking. Improvements are made to the functionality of its driver assistance features. Still out there. It has a silky smooth optional i6 engine.
That isn't great. And a complicated touchscreen. Some things never change.
Models have those cons now, or features.
Yes.
Next is the Range Rover Sport. Engine choices for the Sport are revised. The P460e PHEV powertrain is introduced as an option below the more powerful P550e PHEV. For those who might want to find the Range Rover Sport SV2 Extreme, the P530 engine provides burbling V8 power. New stealth package adds dark finishes and a satin paint protection. Following up the addition from last year, the Range Rover Sport SV Edition 2 is offered with eye-catching exterior colors and weight-reducing hardware.
Does that mean next year it's going to be the SV Edition 3?
I think so. That seems to be the way they're going.
It's a page out of the Chrysler 300 playbook.
I like the one of the cons, bland exterior design. That's on the Sport.
Again, one man's bland is another man's reductive.
And it's coupled with a strange interior design. So there's that going for you.
The full-size Range Rover gains illuminated door sills, enhanced proximity locking and unlocking. Atsuni White is introduced as a new premium metallic paint. The SE trim now includes twin blade sun visor. The SEP 530 standard wheelbase model premium audio system is added as standard equipment. Upgraded air suspension becomes optional. The 550e PHEV powertrain is available in the standard wheelbase Range Rover SUV. Looks, feels, smells like its price. That's a pro.
Competitors are similarly luxurious for less money.
Yes. And then the electric, which is supposed to come up here, is coming, and we'll have more on that when it becomes available. So that is your 2025 lineup for Land Rover. And speaking of the Range Rover and the Range Rover Sport Stealth Pack, if you want to see some pictures of it, they are available. We'll have links, of course, to it on the website. But the Range Rover Sport is gaining the Stealth Pack, which adds $10,300 to the SUV price. The package brings Carpathian gray metallic paint with a satin wrap, Narvik black gloss finish for the exterior trim, and it's also offered on the 395 horsepower Dynamic SE model, which includes a turbocharged 3-liter inline 6 with a 48-volt hybrid system. There's a link to that article, and then there are a bunch of pictures if you want to see those of what it looks like. It doesn't say who took them, but I wouldn't be surprised if it was Nick Dimbleby.
Agreed. It appears to be driving through the desert between a bunch of monoliths.
You're right. It is. There's a bunch of monoliths. Oh, no. Oh, we're in trouble.
They're not 1x4x9.
And then next, we talked about the Octa. This is a video review of the new Octa from Top Gear. Yes, the Top Gear. This is a 21-minute video. And a good 3/4 of it is them driving the Octa down in Africa. I believe it was South Africa. Could have been Namibia. I can't remember exactly what they said. But apparently Land Rover had a gathering of journalists, and Top Gear did go down. It is in South Africa. They were just checking the notes. And they talk about acceleration, suspension, off-road rock crawling, the interior weighting. And then the last part of the video is a chat with Matt Becker, who helped to design the Octa. I think he's the program manager for Octa from JLR. Worth your time if that interests you, or you just want to understand what they did and how to keep it capable. And they talk about the suspension, which is this like 4D chess. I think they call it 6D, and it's just pretty interesting, the things they've done to add to the air suspension to keep it level.
I think we perhaps should be a little more clear when you said that they spend the majority of the video driving it. I think it might be more fair to say I think they spend a majority of the video abusing the Defender Octa.
That's what it's designed for.
And that's what Top Gear does, too. There would be that.
And that goes to the next article, which is the Defender Octa is going to be part of the Dakar and World Rally Raid Racer series. And this is from Car Scoops here. It says a couple of months after Land Rover confirmed the Defender would compete in the 2026 Dakar Rally, the automakers revealed the racing model will be based on the flagship Defender Octa. It will compete in the Dakar's stock racing category as part of a slew of heavily revised regulations. Land Rover is proudly stating that the Defender Octa is the fastest, most capable Defender ever made, so it makes sense it will serve as the base for the race. Not only will it compete at Dakar, but it will also race throughout 2026 FIA World Rally Raid Championship. 2 examples will be used through all 5 rounds of the series, while a 3rd entry will be added to the Dakar Rally. New regulations from FIA are looking to respond to growing demand for high-performance 4x4s and SUVs. As such, vehicles competing in the stock category will share many features with their road-going compatriots. By comparison, current cars in the Rally Raid Championship, like the Dacia Sand Rider and the Ford Raptor T1 Plus, are purpose-built prototypes with few, if any, links to street-legal models. I guess a version of the Defender Octa will be in the Dakar. At least that's my read on that.
It still sounds like it'll essentially be the Defender Octa because it will be in the generally stock competition, it's probably a good thing to see them adding a stock class to the competition. I'm hoping that their intention is to draw more attention to people who may think, oh, well, they shouldn't, but they may think I could bomb through the desert in my truck without having to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars building up a custom vehicle.
I think it also really adds some street cred, if you will, to the Defender. Basically, a stock chassis with some race preps can hold its own against trucks that are built on tube chassis with full-on racing stuff that really can't be driven on the road.
I hope that plays out that way, because the Defender does have so much extra electronics and such that could fail in those types of situations.
It could. So this will be a good test bed for them to test the durability of all the electronics.
I think you both raise a good point as to who is the audience for this, and it is definitely not in the Western Hemisphere. I think this is more oriented towards the Middle East buyers who have lots of money, lots of space, and can go and bound around in the sand.
And bombing through the desert is another word for going to the grocery store.
While watching the video that Top Gear did, it's like, where are you going to do that here in the U.S., in North America? You're not going to do that out west. You're not going to go at high speed. Maybe the Baja 100.
You might find some stretches of, well, I mean, you could go out onto the salt in Utah if you really wanted to, just don't get caught. And then there's the Mojave Desert where you can just take off across the desert and no one's going to see you. So you probably do what you want. There are places you just won't be able to do it for more than, say, 100 miles. It's not the hundreds and hundreds of miles of open sand you have in the Middle East.
So a tank of gas, you're saying?
Yeah, maybe.
There's a lot of people who build desert pre-runner vehicles and such here and run them out all over the place out west. Certainly not something you're going to do in New England or much of the East Coast, but
it's similar to me to buying a supercar. Where are you going to race a supercar? You have to go to a track. And for this particular off-road model that can go at high speed and basically rally racing, there's not much rally racing in this neck of the woods that at least I'm aware of.
There's still a fair amount. Yeah, there's a lot of people who do rally competitions in the US. The number of people who even track their vehicles is quite high.
It was also worth noting here that Land Rover said that this is part of a multi-year agreement as an official partner for the Dakar, supplying a fleet of support and highly specialized vehicles from 2025. So they're part of the Dakar now.
I think it's great marketing for them. It'll be really interesting to see how does the Defender hold up in competing in the new class, but who's their competition and how do they hold up?
I agree with you, and they're certainly competing in those special places. They can do it. They now have a vehicle that they can do that with. And this also shows, I think, some of the benefits they got from buying Bowler. They bought Bowler several years ago, and now I think that's starting to show.
Yeah, I don't think they'd be where they are today without Bowler.
I think the Octa must have some Bowler know-how in it. This will certainly require a lot of Bowler.
I'm inclined to think it's the other way around. I think the Octa is a Bowler with a Defender skin on it.
I would agree with that, especially what they had been doing with the new Defenders.
All right, let's move on, shall we? The Fast Lane put out a video in January here of 2025 called The Truth About Land Rover Reliability You Don't Want to Hear. A catchy title, obviously, to get some clicks, but it's a 20 minutes. I watched it. I thought it was really well done. And they particularly talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly, if you will, of certainly more modern Land Rover ownership. So we're talking things mainly built in this century since 2000. Really, they're touching upon that. To go into the history, though, of Land Rover, if that interests you. But they basically say that starting with Ford, when Ford ended up owning Land Rover for, was it about 5 years, I think? They really did help with increase Land Rover's reliability. But let's face it, it's the perception of reliability, I think, that's continued to dog them. Yes, it's gotten better, but it's certainly not perfect. And as I've stated before, Land Rover's gotten better in their reliability, but so has all the other car makers. And when you're towards the bottom and everyone else goes up, and even if you do go up, you're still at the bottom.
Yeah, perception's a big thing, though, I gotta say, because Ford did the same thing for Jag back in the 90s. They were having all kinds of reliability problems. And then Ford took over, and their primary focus in Jag was reliability and manufacturing efficiency, which actually go together. That's not to say Jag doesn't still have all sorts of reliability problems, but they're far better today than they would have been.
Absolutely agreed. Same with Land Rover, really.
They actually probably wouldn't exist today if Ford hadn't bought them in the 90s.
Yeah, I think it's the fast lane cars. They have a lot of experience with the good and bad and ugly of newer Land Rovers. Just look at their experiences with the new Defender.
And they actually talk about that, by the way.
That's good.
Yeah, they basically say you can't blame Land Rover. They had 3 new Defenders. One had a problem off the lot that sounds like software related that Land Rover did fix. The second one was the dealer would cut the wiring harness. And the third one, I think, was something they did while they were off road. They blew out 2 tires on one obstacle. So
really, you can only fault one of the 3.
Yeah, pretty much, yes.
Because the other 2 are human error, and those humans don't work at JLR.
It's good that Land Rover has seen increased reliability, greatly increased reliability, I think. But it is hard because they're still such a small manufacturer and they are pushing upscale so hard. The benefit of upscale is generally that there are multiple vehicles available, and a disastrous problem or even just an annoying problem with a vehicle doesn't necessarily mean you're stranded, but it can, and it makes people less likely to buy if they're not having fun in their Land Rover or Range Rover.
It's not even necessarily having fun. It's just, is it functional? Not everyone that buys, especially I think a Range Rover, is buying it because they're car enthusiasts. But to your point, their competition are large automotive manufacturers that have more resources and can iterate more often than Land Rover can, even in the rarefied luxury space.
And I think that luxury space is an additional challenge for JLR because they're trying to push into be high tech and be cutting edge in the technology, but the product they're making is going to be used in the worst possible environment for things like that. 72 computers in a hot box bouncing off of rocks.
Or fine sand everywhere and water.
Driving through a lake. And these are things that are not typically conducive to reliability.
And while they're designing for it, doesn't mean that it's going to hold up.
It improves your chances, but it doesn't guarantee anything.
I mean, at the end of the day, it's mechanical, and it will fail. Everything fails.
Well, electrical's even more likely to fail than mechanical, I would say. Yep. So yeah, and having that reliance there, they do great things with it. But actually, this discussion brings me back to the Dakar rally as well. The extra benefit of their sponsorship and participating in the new class is they probably couldn't really afford to build out a couple of one-off bowler type vehicles to race in the Dakar if they weren't having the sort of stock class where it's easier and cheaper for them to get into it.
That and the contract to supply all of the official vehicles gives them production volume that they can affordably do the engineering upgrades they need.
And a whole bunch of spare parts scattered all over the course.
Yeah, that'll be one of the support vehicles. It'll be towing a big rake.
It's worth checking out the fast lane, especially if you get a lot of ribbing from your non-Rover friends, as I think most of us do when they find out you own a Land Rover and they go, isn't that the most unreliable car ever made? And my response is typically, I like to drive a car that has some spirit, has a soul.
Who cares?
Just tell them we can't all drive refrigerators.
And TFL, the fast lane, they say the best Land Rover, the most reliable, LR3, Disco 3. All right, we'll move on. Although this is an older video put up by Channel 4 in the UK, part of the BBC. This is Channel 4, How to Build Land Rover. It was posted in August of last year, but it is of building the original new Defender when it came out in 2020. And so this is a 44-minute video that take you from beginning to end on how they build it. They show the assembly line. They go into the paint shop. They go into adding all the components and the doors. You get to see the robots. You get to see the people. And from beginning to end, they talk about some of the design elements too that went into building the new Defender.
Definitely looking forward to watching this one. I didn't have a chance to watch it before we recorded the news. When we were actually discussing this earlier, I mentioned, oh, they just revamped their factory. But that was the factory in the UK, and these are produced in Slovakia.
Yep.
So the process probably has not changed significantly. Maybe there's a little bit of improvement in the paint production or paint booth processes and such, since that's an area they're pushing forward, but it's probably pretty similar.
Yeah, I'd suspect not much has probably changed, although, as you said, they are changing slightly. I think they were increasing the capability on paint. I think that was it. Not just
like the big bags they roll the wiring harness in on.
Yeah, look at that.
It's like a body bag.
Yep.
The wire
Would you like a new nervous system? True.
Yeah, it's 300 pounds of wire or something like that. I dig the face shields they all wear, though.
This was during COVID times.
This was during lockdown.
Yeah.
But it's also eye protection, so it's probably something they still do.
The thing that got me the most was how many humans are actually involved. I thought there would have been more robots building things, which is good or bad. I'm not sure how to.
Well, a lot of the assembly procedures, it's actually more efficient to use a human, but they've got the robots doing the stuff that the humans used to just get sloppy on, welding the body together.
Or putting the doors on.
And and painting and that sort of thing. But geez, the series trucks, you watch some of the old films and the guy's just like, oh, this looks like a good spot for a spot weld. Dunk. and so you get a new guy and an old guy. The new guy's getting trained. He's got like 38 spot welds down the one side and the old timer's got 5 on the other side.
Yeah, good to see if you want to see how a Defender is built and some of the design elements that went into.
Yeah, they even show you the clay model.
Yes. And they did a nice job. It is beginning to end, but they don't strictly go through that in that straight timeline. They do go through, jump back, jump forward. Yeah, so it does keep your interest. All right, next is a special, unique, rare find. A 1974 forward control surfaces in the U.S., specifically in Connecticut, and it is for sale. Land Rover name is usually associated with record series and Defender models or premium haulers of the Range Rover variety, but the company also developed a few cab-over engine forward control trucks. And now we need to talk about the Land Rover COE trucks because a super rare rig surfaced in Connecticut, currently located in a shop in Bridgeport. This rarely seen hauler was reportedly imported from Spain. And impressively enough, it's not a junkyard find that needs a lot of work. To become roadworthy, this Land Rover runs and drives. While it may look similar to a 101 forward control, this rig is a tad different. Unlike the former, which was produced in Solihull for the British Army, this hauler was assembled in Spain. It was built by the Santana Motor, a Spanish company that had a licensing agreement with Land Rover from 1958 to 1990. Unlike the 101 forward control, which was produced as a military vehicle, the Santana truck was sold to the general public. Built on the Series 2A's 109-inch wheelbase, it was called the 1300 for its 1.3-ton load capacity. Production lasted from 1967 to 1978, but Santana assembled only about 4,000 units. The seller says he imported the 1300 to use as a shop truck, but he has no use for it now that he sold his part of the business. The vehicle is priced to sell at $18,500. And we checked it out on Facebook because that is what's on Facebook Marketplace. It was posted about 5 weeks ago when we're recording this, and it says it's pending. I think, does that mean pending sale for $18,500?
I think the most expensive Land Rover is a cheap Santana. Good luck finding parts for that. It's rare because I don't think anybody wanted it the first time around.
Oh, water and headlights.
Well, it comes with fresh blinker fluid.
Yes. Yeah, there's a video of it, and it actually runs and moves.
For now, like I said, with the brakes, have fun getting parts, because the Santanas, they look like a Land Rover, but the little parts are just enough different that you can't just go down to the store and get regular Rover parts.
Some of the bigger parts, too. There are generally some drivetrain components that are quite different as well.
Yeah, some of those you can make fit, but yeah, it's...
Sometimes they're fun to put in a standard Land Rover.
sometimes.
I do like above the tub here, they have those sills. Or what do we call those here?
Oh, they're stake
Fences.
sides.
Yeah, stake sides. That's pretty cool. That's
Which may or may not be original. They may be aftermarket. Yeah, it looks just somehow just proportionally way goofier than the Rover 2B forward control, which would have been contemporary.
It does look very odd.
Proportions are just screwed up, I think. But one person's ugly is another person's quirky.
That is the 1974 1300 forward control if you want to add it to your collection.
Good luck to whoever buys it.
Some of you out there are collectors. Maybe go check it out. Although, of note, it says it was in Connecticut, but the Facebook Marketplace ad is in Rhode Island.
That's just one side of the river to the other.
True. That's the news for January of 2025. And now, welcome to the CentreSteer podcast, another new podcaster to the world, Ned Crystal. Welcome, Ned Crystal.
Thank you for having me. Glad to be here.
You are with the Nuts and Bolts, the Overlanding podcast, brand new. Been around for what, 2 or 3 months now?
Just about 3 months, almost.
As they say, welcome to the party, pal.
Although we know you from Greek Peak, and before this even gets going, I need to thank you. That was one of the few opportunities I had to have some fun at the 75th anniversary. It was a Saturday. I'd hit the wall with all the planning and activities. I think you recognized that in my face and said, jump in the vehicle. We're going. And we did. We went up on the mountain. You let me drive. That was fantastic.
Let or made?
It was a combination of both, to be honest with you, because I had enough time behind the wheel that I needed the break myself. And John, you look like you needed to have something fun. And I think you had actually stated that you had not driven one of the new 110s before. And I said, today's your day, buddy, because I really want to be a passenger. Actually, as a matter of fact, I think we met before Greek Peak because we met at Winter Rump.
Oh, that's right. We
met him at Winter Rump at the Land Rover main dealership.
Oh, right.
Scarborough.
Scarborough.
Yep.
And oh, that's the infamous story where we were up till 1 and 2 in the morning.
It was later than that, my friend. We got back to the hotel at 4:05 a.m. after pulling out two D90s and a 130 in the Powerline Hill area. Yep.
And it was bitter cold. It was what, 0, I think,
minus
something.
And we had the 2 guys that we picked up that had stuck their D2.
No, that was a Rangy Classic, wasn't it?
Oh, it was a Rangy Classic. They had stuck it and were like out there for what, 6 hours? And they
by themselves, 2 guys, 1 truck by themselves. They were kids, and they were probably in their mid-20s. I don't think they had the right clothing on either.
Doing what they need to survive at that point.
And I said, get in the back seat. We have seat warmers, and they promptly fell asleep within 5 seconds.
Perhaps content for a different kind of podcast.
I think that's NCLRC After Dark.
NSF something or other.
At least NC-17.
The Northern California Club has their After Dark podcast, so that might be appropriate for them. Yes.
Yeah, you don't want to know what happens after dark in Northern California.
No, or in Maine, because it was a, hey, let's go out and take a quick run on it.
Oh yeah, a quick one. Yeah. There's no such thing at Winter Rump.
I refer to as the 3-hour tour, right?
It was.
There you go.
And it was so close.
Oh, it was brutal.
And everybody else was getting stuck. And it was, you didn't have a problem with the 110. It was everyone else. You were testing some lights too, as I recall. Put some new lights on it. And
yes,
that's right. That is the first time we met in person. And then at Greek Peak.
Fast forward to Greek Peak, both work weekends and the Jubilee itself.
How did you get into Rover ownership? How'd you get the green disease?
So I grew up in Southern Connecticut on the water, Greenwich, as a matter of fact, and started up with the affinity for them from many of my neighbors having classics. Then on top of that, my dad had one. So my dad had a 1990 classic, I should say, that hunter green and tan interior. And so my dad worked in Manhattan, and the deal was that he would take the train to work every day. And when I would come home from boarding school, so I went to boarding school for high school, the deal with it was if I drove him to the train station at 4:58 a.m., I got to drive the car until he got home from New York at 7:05 p.m., like clockwork. Then I was one of those stupid 16-year-olds that, hey, driving my fancy Range Rover out town.
Showing off.
Oh, yeah, but it wasn't in that town. It was like a dime a dozen.
Yeah, that's the price of admission.
Exactly. But that was the first introduction to Rovers. And then you fast forward, obviously, not being able to own one. And when you're going through college, when you have no money. And then right after college, when I was playing hockey and all this, being in the city, didn't need one. But when I was in my mid-20s, I guess it would be mid-20s. Yeah, I had a D1 for a short period of time before it crapped out. And then really rediscovered the brand. Always wanted to get back to it when they released the new 2020, when 2020 came around and the new Defender 110 and 90s were coming out. So that's how I got back into the brand. So I took a long hiatus, had Porsches, had sadly BMWs. But every 4x4 I had throughout this whole period, even from 16 up, has something that I've been always built out to an off-road rig, modified, and would wheel. There was that piece of it consistently there. It's just the Rovers came and went when the budget could afford. And then finally the budget could afford.
So you're always pining for a Rover.
Yes. I'll never forget I built a house when I lived in Atlanta, and I had this 3-car garage, and I had the one car, the garage, the bay, because I only had 2 cars at the time. And I was like, that is going to be my Rover bay. Like that was my mindset. And my neighbor went out and bought a brand new LR3. And I was like, this guy has one and I don't have mine yet. And he only has a 2-car garage. So it's always been there, that desire to have something that I can wrench on. And obviously with the new ones, you can't really do a whole lot of wrenching on them, as we all know, but we changed that as a matter of fact today. So we got a 2002 D2 project in, and here we go.
Yeah. So tell us about the brand new one that's added to the fleet.
So funny story. I was out 2 weekends ago with, Dave Hope and Jimmy Presley, both Rover guys. Jimmy has a Seric build, one of the new 110s. And Dave had his trusty LR4 and another friend of ours, Daniel. And so we're sitting at breakfast. And Dave says to me, I had this D2 project that I never did anything with my son-in-law. He's in the van life. It's been sitting for a year. Do you want it? And I'm like, yeah, how much? He's like, don't worry about it. I'm like, I got to at least give you a couple bottles of scotch. He's like, okay, fine. No problem. We'll talk about it later. We proceed to go out on trail. We've got snow and ice up here. We have about remnants of about 6 to 8 inches of snow up here. We were in an area called Bradford, which you can still drive on until April. And we were on this one super icy hill section. And Dave just looks down at me and he says, something's not right with your front tires on my new 110. I'm like, huh? So I get out and I'm looking at it. I'm like, oh crap, a tie rod. So somehow or another, didn't hit any big obstacles, literally had bent my front left tie rod 90 degrees.
Wow.
So I have a new part coming. It's coming from UK. I'll swap it out this week when it gets here. I looked at Dave and I said, how soon can I come pick up the D2? Regardless of the state that it's in. He said, it doesn't have a battery and hasn't been turned on, cranked in a year. And I'm like, well, we'll figure it out. So I literally went down this morning with a brand new battery. We threw it in and she cranked. Transmission's good. The engine sounds fantastic. I drove her out of the snowbank that she had been living in, flatbedded her up to the farm. We got some cosmetic stuff, and we know we've got some electrical stuff, standard 1-year-old, 20-something plus year old car deal stuff to deal with.
And the D2s are replete with amigos to deal with.
No amigos on this one. Yet.
Do not taunt the Rover gods too much.
True. But she does, they're all fairly new HD axles on it. I believe they are terra firma stuff all through. That's all, even the sway bar looks like it was brand new. So
good parts.
Everything underneath looks good.
Wheel arches?
But wheel arches they've seen better days, but who cares? This is going to be a really heavy duty trail rig, but it has steel bumpers front and back, has a 9.5 Warren TI on the front, halo lights up top. So it has the Baja rack on the top. Really, it just needs cosmetic. And then the biggest thing is the fact that the infamous sunroof is not sealed. There was a good inch of water in the cup holders. We'll fix that.
Duct tape and silicone will fix that.
Exactly. That's exactly what's going to happen with that. And then just get the mold out of the inside of the cab.
Yeah, rip the rugs out and that problem.
So the cool thing about it is because of everything I do with the club here in New Hampshire, with the off-road company, and the podcast, There's a great independent rover shop here in Manchester, New Hampshire, which is Artisan Auto Works, which is Sean Lawler, who you guys have all probably met at Romp at one time or another. And he and I were talking. And so we're going to bring it down to him this week, and we're going to plan out a whole build list and long-term plan for it, which I believe they're going to get behind as a company. So it's going to be really cool to see what we do and where we go.
Nice. Let's go back before you got your first proper rover after you were pining. Were you an off-roader? What were you driving? And what kind of trails? Where were you going? Sounds like you've moved different parts of the country.
So I lived in Georgia for 20 years and I was down in Atlanta. And when I was down in Atlanta, I had multiple off-road built out vehicles. And I was a big truck guy for a long time, big full-size truck guy. So one of the first ones I had was a Chevy Avalanche 2007 model that I built it out. I put it on 35s, heavy duty axles, everything steel front back. It was racked out because I was also huge into mountain biking and hiking and really getting off grid. So it had more Yakima crap on the top to the point where like they did an ad shoot with it because the guy saw me at REI buying more camping stuff and was like, "Hey, I got to talk to you about this." Gave me his card. I was thinking it was complete BS and like literally shot the guy an email. And the next day he's like, "Hey, we want to get some mountain bikes on this and get it into one of our advertising campaigns and all that." I was like, "No doubt." So we built that thing out. And then I wound up getting rid of it gave it to my nephew because I had been hit by a drunk driver in Atlanta. And so it had about $5,000 worth of damage, but I was due for a new truck anyway. So I went out, bought the biggest thing you could turn into an off-road vehicle in that time in a full-size trade, which is a Chevy 2500 Z71 Duramax.
Wow.
Full length bed, put it on 37s and redid gearing, steel, everything front back. This thing was armored up like a champ. And so most of the stuff that I was doing was all through off-road trails in Georgia, North Georgia. I had a lot of friends that had like 100-acre farms down in South Georgia, and some of the sketchiest stuff that we would get makes some of the things you see at Romp look like child's play, some of the crap we got into. But we're doing it in full size, kitted out, snorkeled up diesel trucks versus nimble, capable, semi-breaking down rovers. I've always been into it. So I've had so many vehicles that I've modded out. And it was funny. We were living in Atlanta and we're getting ready to move to New Hampshire full time. And we had a 911, we had the Duramax, and then we had an Audi Q5. And so we were talking about, my wife she didn't love the Audi. And we were talking about it. I said, "What we should do, let's get a Mini Cooper and put it on like a 6-inch lift." I'd seen one at SEMA. Empty tires. Like I had this whole plan for it. The hardest part was trying to find somebody on the East Coast that could do the fabrication work for suspension and everything else. Fast forward, we moved to Atlanta, moved up to New Hampshire. And the first thing we did was we went out and bought the Defender. And then a year later, we bought a second Defender. So we have two brand new 110s, 22 and 23.5. But one I'm allowed to modify out, which is a Stormtrooper. And the gray one, I'm not allowed to touch. I am not allowed to cosmetically alter the vehicle for her in any way, shape, or form.
Truck.
Yeah, we know which one's his and which one's hers.
Exactly. To that point, I didn't really want to because it didn't have rear differential in it. It just has center diff lock. And so mine had all three in it. So it looks nothing like it did the day it rolled off the factory. More so since you've even seen it, John.
Oh, really? So what?
Oh, yes.
Well, before you tell us more about that, you were known for being a Star Wars fan and naming your trucks in a Star Wars fashion. So you've already mentioned it. That one's the Stormtrooper.
Stormtrooper. Yep.
And the new D10 is going to be called?
The new D2 is called
D2.
the Womp. It's called the Womp Rat.
Womp Rat. Nice. Any other Star Wars names? Does the wife's get named, have a Star Wars name?
It does. The gray D110 is called Beskar, Beskar. So as Mandalorian armor.
Right.
So yeah, but our Forerunner, that we got a 24 Forerunner TRD Pro, and I'm not allowed to touch it, name it, anything. That's another one of hers, and that's fine with me. But it was going to be the Snow Trooper, but I'm not allowed to do that.
Gotcha. And nice. Yeah, didn't you wear a Stormtrooper helmet when you were out west?
It's a great segue because one of the fun facts about how much of a nerd I am is that I literally carry in the vehicle. I've got a Wrecker helmet from Bad Batch behind me. I've got a Clone Trooper helmet, a Stormtrooper helmet. I've got X-Wing, TIE Fighter, blah, blah, blah. there's one in the car. And so I went on a trip out west of Colorado through Denver, we started, met everybody in Denver. It was with the Lucky 8 guys and some of their friends and our friends. And we were going out to Grand Junction and then to Moab and all the passes. And so we're stuck in Friday afternoon Denver traffic, bumper to bumper, 3 hours just to get up to where you're going to see the Eisenhower Tunnel. Like, we're not even close, going up that big hill there. And we're just sitting there, and there's a line of rigs. And I think I was third back, and one of the guys behind me was an LR4. I think I had two of the newer 110s in front of me. We're just sitting there. I'm like, this is boring. And I have a Mandalorian helmet that lights up. So the visor, the visor eye area actually has LED lighting around it. And there's this suburban of 5 kids and mom and dad going up to whatever fancy house they have in the mountains. And the kids are just literally, you could tell they're pulled. They're just going crazy. Mom and dad are pulling their hair out. I'm like, screw this, put the bucket on, hit the lighting on it, drop the window down. And next thing I know, I got 4 kids leaning out the window taking cell phone photos. I drove across the state of Kansas on the way to that trip with a stormtrooper helmet on. Saw my Instagram. Get at least like 10 or 15 new members in that one part. But yes, I have been known to take a swim at Lost Lake at 12,000 feet with stormtrooper helmet on. Yeah, I'm not wired correctly in the gray matter up there. But hey, too many pucks to the head. We're big Star Wars fans here. It has to be involved somehow or another in my Rovers, which is just my thing.
And Stormtrooper has, you change the lights up on the front, so it has even a little Star Wars theme going on. Any other Star Wars tie-ins?
We've got some Easter eggs around the car, both inside and out. So there are patches, obviously, on the felt headliner inside, but there are some stickers from both the Empire to little Stormtrooper helmets. Even the valve stem covers are metal black with white Stormtrooper helmets on them. It's amazing what you can find on those large .com sites that sell you a pack of 8 for $5. And you go down the rabbit hole. So there's a fair amount of those placed conspicuously around the vehicle on the exterior.
So what mods have you made then?
The first thing I did when I got it was some mounts to the top, because obviously gear is huge for me. So it was originally traction boards up there. And
you got to store all those helmets. They got to go somewhere.
There's now a roam box up there.
Yeah, that's a trailer option there.
Depends if I bring the suits, then I need the trailer.
And we need the 110 to be able to tow the trailer with Beskar suits in it.
The first big mod we did was while we were at Greek Peak, actually. I finalized with Ralph Sarek and I was the first one to get his nose to belly skid plates with on it. So that was the first thing, because, well, when you bash a fuel tank or two in, you need to take some precautions. And he was just about to come out with them, gotten to know him. And thankfully, and luckily, I was able to go down to Richmond and we got those fabbed up and put on, and they've been a godsend. So that was that's the biggest like necessity mod that I did. But through Lucky 8, we've now got their full steel bumper and winch system on the front. It has their light pod roof rack accessory on the front. So I worked with Tyree Lights out of Michigan in Wisconsin, and they hooked me up with those 9,000 lumen per pod yellow monsters that you got to see in action. They're dish lights as well. And then they just sent me a couple months ago, I have amber chase lights from them on the back that I can use strobe, solid, and more importantly, I can use them as camping lights, which is great. They're not so damn bright as your standard clear LEDs. Wired in, full on GMRS radio, 50-watt radio into the system. We're about to put in a second backup battery system in the trunk space under the boot flap there from Red Arc, because I do take so many long hauls with it. I've had it for 2.5 years, and she's 106,000 miles as of yesterday. We're putting her through her paces.
Yes.
And then obviously there's all the stuff that's mounted onto the roof rack, because for the classes and whatnot I teach, I have to take a fair amount of gear with me. And at my age, rooftop tents don't work in the middle of the night when you get up 3 times, when you got a prostate the size of a grapefruit. So ladders are no bueno at 3 a.m, especially if you've had a few bourbons around the campus.
You need a hose.
I could, but I also am like the clumsy knucklehead that even if I was completely not drinking, I'd still might have an issue with the ladder at 3 o'clock in the morning or 4 o'clock in the morning or whatever it might be. So I'm a gazelle ground tent guy. I just enjoy that more. But so the roof has got everything from spare parts and all the tools to the shovel, the axe, the high lift, the whole deal. She's pretty much, there's not a whole lot else I could do to her at this. unless I want a bigger rooftop tent, which that's just not an option for me.
Yeah, I'm not a fan either of those. It just seems like it would take up too much space.
That is the one other option that I did do that I should say. It came with the factory 19s on it. And so we dropped it down to 18-inch black steelies, shaved the calipers down in the back, and then got 35s on it. So that, I must say, that was a big component. And then, of course, the re-gearing aspect of the rear differential. But it was important to do, as they are when you change tires.
How much did you have to lift it to get 35s in it?
We just did 2-inch lift rods on it. And then I did 2-inch.
The tire's clear with just 2 inches?
And then we got more clearance on the front by taking off all of the lower bumper by putting the steel on. It already has, because you're doing cooler relocation brackets, and raising those auxiliary coolers backing up. You wind up gaining a ton of fender clearance there because of the steel bumper. So if I hadn't have done that, I probably would have had to cut and trim a little bit, but still has plenty of room in there for 35s. Surprising.
How bad's the hit on miles per gallon? And I shouldn't even ask, but I'm still curious.
You have to ask.
Are you getting, is it single digits now?
No,
Okay.
she does weigh almost 9,000 pounds. So
Whoa.
she's getting up into Rivian weight territory. I'll take her over the scale in our town, which you get to do when you go to the dump every week, and trail weight versus non-trail weight. But she's barely double digits right now. I think a full tank, I might get 210 miles to a range on a full tank.
Yeah. Okay.
It's ugly.
You did just pick up a Rivian, didn't you?
No, I have done Rivian training classes. I've taught alongside Mr. Burke out in Colorado. We did the 75th class for Rivian, and I have driven them, but I did not buy one. I'm not an EV guy until it's something that's more sustainable in the long term,
right?
Both from a battery aspect as well as a disposal of said battery aspect. It just doesn't work for me.
Gotcha. Okay. I guess I was listening to your podcast and I thought you had said you'd picked one up, but I was.
That was my guest the other week who has one. Mark
maybe that was
Formack.
it. Gotcha.
Mark, who is out of Virginia, has a couple of Rovers. I think he's got a D2 and an LR3, and they have just picked up a Rivian.
Okay. Yeah, that's right. The guy, he has been to Rove a number of times.
He was at Great Peak too.
Yeah, my memories are fleeting.
There are a few people there that you ran into.
Indeed. So are those the only Rovers you have?
So at this point, it's just the two 110s and the D2.
Okay.
Hardly seems like enough.
Trust me, if I could, especially with the barn that we have out back on the property here at the farm, I would love to have more. We're easing into this right now.
That mean you're easing the wife into this?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
Yes.
Just like one of the other things is I'm looking for is to get a parts D2 to basically get dropped on property so that when I inevitably start needing to replace many things, I can just pull my own pick.
If you've got a barn, I don't think that it's possible to have like more space than you need for storing Rover parts. Something doesn't add up there.
There's a whole lot of farm equipment in the barn for all of the pasture work that we do that very soon we'll be adding a lift and hopefully another couple of vehicles too. Because I really do want to have a Series 3. I want to get a nice patinaed up, run it around here at the lake, and run a cool Series 3 around here would be awesome. There's one in next town over. I have not met the gentleman yet, but he has a beautiful Series 3. And they did a clear coat over the patina, and I've seen it twice, only in the summer months. It's been put away because I've seen his Aston Martin in the driveway, which I'm blown away by. Older Aston Martin, but still, it's a very British family. They have a British sign on the house. And every time I've seen the Series 3, I've been just popping and be like, hey, fellow Rover enthusiast here. I know it's New Hampshire. Don't shoot.
Remember, Series 3, they've still got the PTO on them, power takeoff. You could use that around the farm.
Yep,
if
exactly.
If you need an excuse for
there you go. Legitimate farm expense.
The barn.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Going back to its roots, for sure.
So you do the older Rovers, the leaf sprung, and
I love a classic. I've always loved classic style vehicles. It's not classic in that regards, but I did just finish and semi-restore and then sold to a guy in Maine. It's not classic, so don't shoot me. But it was an 84 military Cuxy M109 Blazer, which is about as American non-technology as you can get, right? EMP vehicle. Thing was a beast. And of course, I did heavy-duty 1-ton axles on that, completely rigged it out, put it on 37s, and loved that thing. It was a pig.
I think those are starting to become collectible, aren't they?
They are. In fact, I got mine for $4,500, and if they're fully kitted out and restored, you can see those going for like $50,000 now. I did not sell it for anywhere near that. I made some money off of it, but I just got to a point where I was like, I don't have enough time and I don't have enough desire to deal with a Chevy when I'm starting to go where I wanted to go.
Friends don't let friends drive Chevys.
Exactly. I've always loved the classic stuff. Even growing up, when we had the Rover, my dad had a 1970s CJ and whatnot. So I've loved that, but they've been cool, but they're not as iconic as Rovers. They just aren't. That's the next step in the wish tree on the vehicle front.
Any other vehicles on the wish list?
They're not Rovers.
Ah, interesting. Okay. Anything of note?
I am really excited to see, and I'm hoping that I'll have an opportunity since I just did the Lexus GX550. I went down to North Carolina, was invited to go down and test that at the OEX facility through a good buddy of mine out in the mountain area, OLT 4x4. And the one I'm real excited to come out is the 26 Scout Hybrid. They're going to have the electric models coming out next year. So they've done a really phenomenal job with it. It looks just like the old International Scouts, but with obviously modern twists and modern amenities. They have the hybrid version coming out. So they're going to have a petrol electric hybrid crossover and fully capable. It appears to be. I'll just be curious to see what really happens when it comes out. But that's like the only modern vehicle that I've been quite interested. We had a moment when we were getting the second 110 where we'd actually put in a order for a Range Rover Autobiography LWB. And then we had gone to Destination Defender, which I've done a couple of those. I did the Texas and the New York one. When we were in the New York one, we went in the obstacle course. We were one of the first 3 vehicles that they let through before they closed it down because of all the rain and the flooding. And my wife was in the back seat and she said, cancel the Autobiography order. I want one of these. And I was like, thank you, Lord, because you just saved me like $200,000.
Nice.
And at that rate, you could just use the money and get 2 more.
Exactly. I tried to use that logic. It did not work so well when I tried to implement that.
Why is it the wives don't understand math?
If you can figure that one out, I think you're going to make a lot of dudes happy in the world, my friend. The beauty of being an instructor up at the Vermont Experience Center for Land Rover is that I get to drive the full-size Range Rover LWVs while I'm there. I get my fill of that and the Disco 5s and honestly, some of the cool stuff that people bring up that they want to go out for the day in and learn. So it's been great that way.
How did that come about?
That's how I got into the whole instruction deal. And that came about I got invited by our dealer in Boston where we bought the 2 Defenders from. And I got invited to compete for them, represent them in the I have to look at my shirt, 22, I believe it was, trophy competition that they had up in Manchester. And it's either 22 or 23. And so we're in the middle of winching the Defender 90, my partner and I, up, I'd say 30 yards of a fairly steep ascent. So using a tree strap, single line pull. And I was behind the seat. He's handling the controller. We're winching it up. And the manager of the facility looks at me and she goes, you're here all the time. You come to all the owners' days. You've been up here for like lessons, more of the vehicle stuff than we do. Like, why don't you should just get a job here. And I go, cool. When do I start? And I'm like, literally we're in like event 3 of the 15 that day. Fast forward, I think it was like a month later and they had me out and I started teaching there and it's just been fun. Do that occasionally. It's a 3-hour drive each way for me. I have to make it really work for some of the bigger events when they've had them, but that's how I was I was already going down to Destination Defender because we had a whole group of us that were going to go out to Big Bend National Park afterwards. And JLR called me and said, hey, I know you're already going. We'll obviously kick back your cost for tickets. Do you mind going down and being a staff member to the event down there and help out at the off-road course? And I said, yeah, absolutely. That's fine. No problem. So I was able to do that. And cool venue, really cool venue. Again, it's every Land Rover event. It's like what they say at MAR. You're never going to get a dry Destination Defender event. Now, I understand that California was this year, so good for them. But the first 2 Destination Defenders, we woke up at our campsite the first year in May, and it was like we were on an island and about a foot of water completely surrounding our tent. And then in Texas, the same thing. It makes the off-road portion fun.
People have to learn how to cross the moat at some point.
every Land Rover should have a pair of wellies in the back, right? I think it's just standard. And I was laughing at the New York event because you had all the people that drove up from the city. It wasn't too far. It was an hour and 40 minutes, I think, from New York City. And these folks were getting out of the Ranges and the new 110s, and they all had the Scorpion.
And they're in penny loafers.
Oh, there were women getting out of the cars in 5-inch Jimmy Choo stilettos.
Wow.
And Ralph and I looked at each other and started laughing because he goes, how long until you and I have to start pulling people out? But we were ready and willing to start pulling people out because so many vehicles got stuck.
If they're in stilettos, you're literally going to be pulling people out.
There was
not just their trucks, but people.
Multitude of it. And the folks complaining about the environment. And I'm like, this is a horse farm. And it's Land Rovers like that. They go together perfectly.
Did you not read the brochure?
No, it doesn't matter. Read the brochure.
Rather humorous moments of people watching at both of those events. Again, going back to when I was 16, not only was it the standard green and beautiful, was it Kensington green? Is that what they called that? I can't remember now. But you had the green Range Rover, the tan interior, and then you had the matching plaid and wicker picnic baskets. And then there was always sets of wellies in the back and either shotguns, because that's what we took the pheasant hunt, bird hunt, and whatnot. And I've continued that tradition the same way, and even in the Stormtrooper.
That's the whole reason the Range Rover existed, was for pheasant hunting.
Exactly. Also a really great vehicle. The classics are up here. We do an ice racing tournament on the lake every winter, which hopefully it'll happen this February. We didn't have enough ice last year, where they take jalopies out, chain down one side, run them in an oval until the cars explode, basically. And you'll pull up to watch this.
Nice.
And you'll have everything from your Duramax diesel trucks, but you'll see 4 or 5 of the Range Rovers, and even a couple of Coulions that open up with the fancy seats that eject out of the back, and the plaids and the tabletops. One of our Black Labs got drunk off of Bloody Marys one year. Yeah, somebody knocked over a pitcher of Bloody Marys off the tailgate of a Range Rover, and the Black Lab, 8 months, lapped it all up. And we were looking over. He doesn't look right. Took a few steps and passed out.
So how does this all get you into your own off-road company then? You're doing your own off-road training and experiences.
What I do at LRE, it's Land Rover Experience, it transitioned to the fact that I run the New Hampshire Land Rover Club, which is the Defenders Off-Road Club of New Hampshire. Or
those dorks.
Dork, New Hampshire.
Those
right?
dorks.
Those guys, which is an all Land Rover club. It just happened to be 4 of us sitting around one night, probably after too many bottles of wine, after a day at the Land Rover Experience, coming up with the name. And I do all the guiding, and I do all the trip planning, and I do all the stuff for the club in that regard. So every month we have our rides. I'm leading them. I'm coordinating them. I'm doing all of that. When I was out in Grand Junction with the Lucky 8 guys and that trip that I was talking about through Denver with the Star Wars helmets, got to meet and hang out with Bill Burke. Phenomenal experience. Such a great guy. He's become a really big mentor to me. And he said, you need to come and test an I4WDTA and get into seeing what that's all about. So the International 4-Wheel Drive Trainers Association, Chris Cole's place down in New Mexico. I did. I went down that fall and did my first TFC training, testing for candidacy. And of course, bombed. He said to me right before I went, you're not going in this like thinking you're even come close to passing. This is just to go see, is this really how deep you want to go in terms of being an instructor and a guide and off-road specialist and the bug bit. And so since that day, I've been working with a number of their instructors as mentors, teaching and also being a student as often as I can. And it just kept spiraling to the point where I'm like, I really love the focus point. My niche is more of the newbies in terms of my instructional demographic being folks that literally, I just bought a 4-wheel drive and I want to go really cool places and camp and hike. I have no idea how to do that. It's been great. I'm doing this as the second year of the company. We've got a huge schedule for this summer. We're already booking up. So I do the instructional classes, both in the driving 101, how to actually understand your 4-wheel drive system and take your vehicle off-road, and learning how to do that responsibly and safely and treading lightly. And then I also have the recovery components. So we do basic and advanced recovery classes, teaching everything what a momentum extraction and a traction extraction is and what gear and ratings are and why they're important, all the way up to, okay, we're going to do a lift and chip with a high lift jack or a jack and stack, and maybe a 3-to-1 redirect and a pull and why we're doing it this way, and mechanical sympathy and advantage and all that stuff. And then the third component that I do in the company, which is my really fun part, and it's because of, I just had such a background in it after I got out playing hockey in just a high level niche of real estate development and dealing with that kind of demographic. We do luxury off-grid excursion tours in New England. And so we partnered with a phenomenal glamping resort in Vermont. It's safari style tents / cabins. They're reminiscent of what you used to see on old school out of Africa Land Rover safaris where they were going through. They've got ensuite showers and just every piece of it on the inside of these safari tents is just phenomenal. And then you're out in the middle of the side of a mountain. I've got a chef that comes in and does cooking for that. And then we go out and we go to really cool trails with, I'll call them those hidden mountain lakes and things that you're just not going to get to on the regular roads. You have to have a vehicle to get there. And then we incorporate training and recovery as part of those excursions. That's how it all morphed. It's because basically, at the end of the day, to cut it, to make it a simple explanation, I retired 10 years ago after my second round of cancer. Did have another round of it, but I was basically like, if we're good financially, then let's take some time off. I need to be outside. I need to be doing those types of things, adventure and travel. And we've always traveled, whether it's international or just in domestic US. And that's where I thrive, is outside. And I've always been a teacher, and I've always been an instructor, from youth hockey sports and things like that all the way through. And that's what I'm doing in the off season as a ski instructor here at our local mountains. It's just fun. It's fun, and we're going to see where it goes. So it's led into the company aspect, and I've got some amazing repeat clients. It's funny. I was talking to somebody the other day, and it's, if you had a superpower, what is it? I said, I'm good at putting people together. If you talk to the Boston dealership, I sold 14 cars for them in 1 year. I'm members of my club.
Right.
If you talk to a couple of guys in the New Hampshire dealerships and some of the even private there's one guy that has his own dealership now. They do specialty cars. He's got 2 Defenders out. I think I just sold 2 of them for him this past week because of clients of mine that are looking for new Defenders. They have LR4s and classics and things like that. So there's that component, but putting the right people together to make things happen for them is just something I love doing. And that's how this business has been going. That kind of has allowed me to really see where this whole training and education piece is. And I've got 2 women's Jeep clubs that have me on contract that are doing events with me this summer, some other clubs that I'm working with. And then I'm also the on-staff instructor for our local terrain park. It's just been a really cool, I had no idea where this was going to go. And honestly, at the end of the day, the best part is I've met so many incredible people across the country. And that's where that whole putting people together thing has just been a lot of fun, is knowing so many folks and having so many connections now from Arizona to California to Wisconsin, et cetera. Rover world, non-rover world, doesn't matter. It's just been great.
As you can tell, this naturally leads to the podcast that you started, right? Put together a coherent response.
Well, I hope I'm not too verbose, but yeah, the podcast came out as a result of, so I went down to this TFC for I4WTA. Again, that's the testing for candidacy in the International Four-Wheel Drive Traders Association out of Chris Cole's place, the Safe Extract facility in New Mexico. I was there in September. And a couple of the instructors are really dear friends and mentors. One of them has a podcast that he dabbles in here and there. And so I'm driving back 2,000 miles back to New Hampshire. And many of you are going out in March, and that'll be a fantastic time for you. Unfortunately, I have just some commitments that I can't get out of that will not allow me to attend, but I'll be back there in October doing the way more in-depth stuff than you guys are going to get into, but it'll be a great chance for you guys to learn some really good stuff.
He's referring to the ANARC Stewards training that's coming up.
Correct. Which is going to be, looking at the list of trainers you all have, you're in amazing hands. Eric Brown, and obviously Bill Burke and Chris Nelson, Mike Reed.
How similar is this going to be to the testing for candidacy training?
Based on what I saw in the overview that I just was able to finally take a look at, I guess it was last week, you guys are going to go through basically, I'd call it a baby topographical version of what we do. Obviously, you're not going to be in the boot camp environment that we are. Like the minute you roll up there, you're getting evaluated, and you make a minor's mistake, they're all over you, as they should be in that moment. You guys are going to actually learn and this is a teaching environment, so it's not going to have that similar pressure. Plus, I would imagine based on the topic aspects you're going into, it's going to be much more cursory, top level, which is cool. You're still going to get a ton out of it. But we spend, heck, I think we spent at least a full day on all the different things with high lift. And, I've got to know every single component and every single bolt and every single pin on that to be able to not only regurgitate it, but more importantly, be able to teach that back and understand how the forces and loads and things like that. You guys will probably do high lift jacking, but you're not going to have to be scrutinized for the level of knowledge on that or any of the rigging stuff. We were belaying vehicles down a hill with X-Locks last year in testing. Doubt you guys are going to do that, but you're going to have some fun. And the coolest part is the driving train out there, both the 2 courses they have at camp and then the one that you'll go out on the BLM land. Oh, it's awesome. It is absolutely awesome. Just don't expect anything to come home that's not going to be covered red. I still have red dust in my Defender for both years that I've gone out there.
Nice.
And it will not come out.
No,
Mhm.
no.
It's going to be fabulous for you guys.
I understand that training is the usual training, not the steward's training, but is like a full day, as you said, boot camp, where they keep you up and test you.
Yeah,
Yes,
it's called
yeah.
testing, not training. So if you go in thinking this is a training course that you're going to get a certificate at the end just because you did 5 days of training, no, this is both. They exhaust you from, it's very similar to some of the stuff you might equate with military type things. And a lot of the folks are former military, but you are going to get physically, emotionally, and mentally taxed from the minute you get there. And the amount of knowledge that's thrown at you that you have to not only take in, but be able to verbalize back in a coherent manner at multiple different points with multiple different teammates. They're switching you around with groups. So you're teaching to different people. You'll come in from a driving portion of testing and you'll get out of the vehicle. It's 90 degrees and you're slugging water down and you have maybe 15 minutes before you have to get in another vehicle. There's no sitting around. They're already firing questions at you. Okay, so tell me about semi-float versus full float axles. Talk to me about the equation. If I'm putting 37-inch tires on something that was a 33, how do I re-gear that? What do I need to do to figure out my re-gearing? Those types of things. So you're just always constantly, because again, as we all know, you get out on trail, just not even in the instructional bit, but you get on a trail and something goes sideways real quick. And you have minutes potentially to secure the seat, secure the vehicle, secure people, and then figure out how do we extract the vehicle safely and securely. And if you don't have all of that information and processes like the IDPE process that Chris Cole teaches, which is identify, decide, plan, and execute in your mind in terms of how to do a stock assessment, you're really going to potentially have some human safety issues quickly. And so that's why they grill you with that. And the hope is, before you get to one of these TFCs, you've been working with one of their trainers and doing all of the training components, right? Doing all of the academic stuff so that you get there. It's more about fine tuning that and pressing your metal to see what kind of character you have under pressure.
Is this TFC similar to what they do in karate, where once you get to your black belt, then the real training begins?
It is. That's the thing, is that the folks I know who have passed in the last year or two that I've done this, where I was 8 points, I think, away from pass 2 last year. So that's cool.
Yep.
Not a problem. I'm excited about it. I'm glad that I didn't get past, frankly. You will then be partnered up with some of these phenomenal legends. You have trainers that are legends in the business. Not obviously Bill Berg, but Chris Cole, but John Marshall, Matt Balaj. There's so many incredible John Mapes out of New York. I mean, so many of these phenomenal guys, and you'll get partnered with them and you will work with them to further hone your skills. It's something that the organization really aligned with my belief system, and my belief system that I came out of my cancer with, that I didn't realize it would align. I didn't realize they had this kind of philosophy, but you got to learn every day. And so my whole deal with everything I do is trying to learn something new every day and then serve somebody else. And that aligns right on with them. And that is, we want to teach, but we also have to be consistently learning. And as you guys all know, especially the way JLR is going, for example, on the J part right now, you're going to have to keep learning with the way that the vehicles are changing. But you also have to be caught up on, I've got to be able to figure out, do I still remember how to double clutch? Do I still remember how to manually drive? We get students in our classes and the question always comes up. I had one in Vermont a couple weeks back. he brought out a manual JK. And I said to his wife, I said, do you know how to drive manual? She looked at me and she said, no. I looked around. We had 8 students in class. And I said, are you comfortable with anyone else driving your vehicle out should something tragic happen? And he was like, yeah, I think so.
Hadn't thought about that.
You have to make that decision now, because I can guarantee that we will be on really easy trails today, and we will be doing very controlled environment driving instruction as well as recovery instruction. But there's always Mr. Murphy, and there's always things I can't control. And if something happens and you are unable to drive, your vehicle has to get off trail, and we have to get you to a safe place. Think about these things when you go out with your groups on trail, especially, and we go in all our rover clubs, right? We go to an event like Mar, or we go to an event, Winter Green or Winter Romp, and it might just be, you're the one driving the vehicle and it's only you in the vehicle, and you're going out with 8 buddies. Something happens, you need to know those 8 people really well and be able to trust that you guys will take care of that thing if something happens to them. We can all
found for me off-roading is when I'm not paying attention is when you get into trouble. And it's usually like you're coming off the trail or you're taking a break.
Yes.
I got the 109 high centered on snow once just because we were stopping for lunch, and I'm like, oh, it's fine. Nope. I end up getting high centered. It's not a major deal, but that's when you're like, I wasn't paying attention.
When you drop one wheel slightly off and get sucked into the ditch too, because you weren't really concentrating on what you were doing.
Right.
I've lost a few mud flaps as a result of that somewhere in Vermont on my 110 because of that same thing, because I'm trying to handle radio and the 9 cars behind me. Luckily, I was able to extract myself just with different drive modes, but I did leave a mud flap somewhere. We couldn't find it because I don't like leaving parts on the trail, which is very common when we have rovers, but we pick them up before we venture on. And that's the thing, is that like understanding for the new folks that the amount of focus it takes. That's why at the end of a trail day, especially if it's just buddies going out and I'm not really in instructor mode, I'm still exhausted. And I really look forward to sitting around that campfire with a good glass of scotch, because I'm wiped. 9 hours behind the seat, as you all know.
A lot of mental energy is expended when you're
Yep.
off-roading. It's not driving on the highway and just focus forward. You're looking for holes and off camber. What's going on around you?
You got to be looking 100 yards down the road, 50 yards down the road. And the last time you have really the ability to look at anything you're about to drive over, technically most vehicles, I think, is actually 12 feet. So 12 feet is the last time you're going to see whatever that is before, oops, am I high centered, or am I dragging control arm across it, or did I just bang my diff? And, doing that for 26 miles in an off-road capacity at 3 or 4 miles an hour, that takes a toll.
And then do it in a leaf spring truck.
Yes.
That's without power steering.
And that's a situation where you may actually have a chance to see something at 12 feet, but that 50 yards is the last time you'll be able to stop if you.
And do you take Dramamine for that, John, in the Leaf Springs? Is that a prescribed thing before you go?
That's right. We went off-road years ago in the 109, and Bruce, who's in our club, he was more of a coil-sprung D1 driver, and he rode with me.
I think his kidneys are still bruised.
That's what he was to say. And man, we had to be about 100 feet, and it was rocky beyond up and down. Yeah. He'll still tell me my kidneys still hurt. Even and I laughed because I didn't know that's my response. It was like, here we are. We're not getting out of this. This is what's going to have to happen. All we're going to do is we're going to bounce down this. There's no other way to do it.
And that's kind of part and parcel to being in our particular club too. Is just everything's an opportunity to laugh at somebody else.
That too, yes, in a nice way.
You got to have fun.
You do.
If you're not having fun, what's the point, right?
That's right.
The whole reason we're out there, at least in my mindset, is it's the people I'm with, and it's the cool terrain we're going through. And I don't really care that I don't have and we talk about this a lot with folks I know up here. It's just, I'm not saying I have to be through X amount of miles or X amount of hours. We're going to go here. Like last Saturday, we only got through half a trail before I bent a tie rod. And then 2 hours to get it off trail because we could drive it out, but I had to keep it on all those icy hills going down. And guys were great about it. They were like, I don't care. I'm still out in the woods. That's it. I'm with my boys and my girls out in the woods. And hopefully my kidneys are in one piece.
What happens after you get to the test for candidacy? You pass that.
Yep.
So then what's the next steps? I'm curious now about what happens to become a certified instructor, I take it?
You are a certified instructor once you achieve that pass, which we're hoping for me is this year.
Okay.
And then when you're certified, obviously the neat thing about it is that the certification is because you teach all of this information in a consistently approved way, right? You understand all of the modalities, you teach the information the appropriate way, which of course is the reason the association exists, because there are a lot of folks out there that just teach. And it's the way that Uncle Bubba taught them how to do it when they were knee high to a grasshopper, and there's no rhyme or reason to it. Just one of the greatest things that the association has done is it's really focused in on understanding the gear you buy, understanding that your gear should have working load limits and minimum tensile strength, minimum braking strength, and understanding what those ratings means and how that works to how you're going to need to use it in case you need to use it. And so many folks just go out and be like, I bought this gear on a big website that because it matched the color of my car and it just says maximum braking strength on it. And you're like, yeah, I don't want to trust my life or more importantly, somebody else's. So they have all those facets that go into being a certified instructor. It's that consistent messaging. And then the great thing about it is so many of these guys have incredible contracts, both in the recreational world, but obviously there's a lot of government and industrial and corporate contracts. And when they need to get, like they may say, I've got Corporation A coming in, and I've got a huge week-long class. I need more instructors. Being an I4WTTA certified instructor is a great resource for them to pull in, but it's also the fact because you can interchange these folks, right? I just know that if you're I4WTA, I can have you cover one of my classes, not even have to think about it. But it's also the access that you have, depending on which way you want to go with your business. It gives you more capability to get into vehicle or equipment testing for manufacturers, because again, you have that level of certification. It just opens a lot more doors. And it's honestly, it's a great tribe of people. They're an incredible group of men and women that frankly, I am excited to earn my spot in one day to be part of that tribe, part of that family. And you'll have a lot more opportunities as a result. To answer your question, that's where it goes.
Good luck.
And then the cool thing is, as a certified instructor, you get to come back and be one of the instructors that's the evaluators at the TFC. So you get to get on the other side of the fence.
You become the drill instructor.
Yes. So thank you. We're working hard. In fact, I was up late last night working on topographic maps and azimuths and all sorts of different stuff, because you've got to be pretty in-depth knowledge on everything from gear to navigation to first aid. I'm going to be getting my wilderness first aid certification in a month or two, adding that into it. You've got to know all that stuff. So it's great for knowing that there I can safely go out and enjoy getting to that remote camp spot that my wife and I want to go to. That's ultimately why for me.
Good luck to you.
Thank you. It's a lot. And I think the segue is I'm on the road back, this 2,000-mile trip back.
Let's take us back to where we were before we had this little distraction. Yeah.
And I'm listening to some great podcasts. There's so many great podcasts for off-roading and overlanding. And I'm going back and I had this moment, right? So this is in September. I had this moment. I'm saying, but what they're all talking about is so high level. If I'm going to run Dakar, I'm running it and I'm building a vehicle with this certain way and I'm crossing the Serengeti, and this is why I built out my 110. It's all this great stuff, but it's at such a high level. And I'm not a smart person. I'm just not. I'm not. And so I get back to New Hampshire. Literally, I got home, dropped my stuff, went to the event in Vermont that I was guiding at for 3 days. And I was guiding all these new folks so they could sign up. That we had 30 people every day that I was taking through Vermont trails at the pilgrimage event. And the guy that runs that event has a podcast called the Class 4 Podcast. And he doesn't just because he's got so much going on. So there's an episode here, and then maybe 6 months, there might be another episode. Good stuff, good conversation points. And fast forward, I had talked about it. He's like, I should get you on the show one time. I'm like, cool, just let me know. We can do an episode. Whatever, life got busy. Sitting around in the holidays, and I've got pneumonia. I am thinking about, we put out the schedule for the business. I'm like, how do I get more interest in the business? But also at the same time, going back to my personal ethos, how do I learn more and provide and serve others? And we're just sitting there, and it was like, ding, ding, I should do a podcast. I have no idea how to do a podcast. I'm technically inept.
That's never stopped anyone from having a podcast.
That was the other thing, was like, I don't want to be one of those really bad ones that nobody wants to listen to, or just, do I even know?
But see, the difference is you the so-called learn something every day. So you learn something every episode. You're going to suck when you first start. It's just how it works, but you work at it and you get better.
Exactly. And that's literally been the cool part about it, having done now 11 episodes, already recorded the 12th, and I have the 13th recording tomorrow. I had no idea what I was doing. So I did all the research that one can do on the interwebs and found a platform that I really liked in terms of how to do recording and editing. And it was like idiot proof because I'm the idiot. So I started working with that. In the first few episodes, I was listening to a couple of the early episodes the other day, and I was like, God, the editing was so bad on this. Like the background noises and the cuts were terrible. And then like
our first dozen, you literally could not hear them.
Yeah, it's true.
Yes.
But yeah, it's got to work at it, get better.
You got to learn how to tie the shoes, and then you can start walking and running. And so it's gotten better. But the cool thing is great guests. I've got such a great group of people that have some phenomenal in-depth knowledge. And I looked at this model and I said, okay, now that I think I know what I'm going to use to make the podcast, what is the podcast really going to be about? And because I love teaching new folks so much, and those that are just getting into this awesome sport hobby, not necessarily rover specific, just whatever the vehicle is, doesn't matter, men, women, etc. I said, I want to do this all around newbies. I have a great level of personal experience of breaking crap, having to rebuild it, or figure out who I know that can help me rebuild it so I can get back on trail. I've made all the mistakes, and that was where the whole idea for the show started. Basically sitting around having these thoughts and thinking, okay, I know how to logistically create said podcast now. So I've done my research on platform and things like that. I know a lot of really cool people that have great stories and or are experts in certain pieces, and they can share that knowledge to others. So that was the whole creation mindset or theme, if you will, of what I wanted to do with this podcast. Basically, I've made the mistakes. I've looked at and sought out the experts that know how to not either make mistakes or have the great way of saying the instruction not to do those things and provide that information. And I wanted to pass that on. And so that's where nuts and bolts, because it's everything from the mechanical to, we'll get into it all, even camp cooking. It's just one episode of off-roading and overlanding. And I've even got a guy who's a buddy of mine that's gone through TFC with me, who's in van life. So we're going to do an episode on van life, but there's so many facets to overlanding and off-roading. And if you're brand new to it, I don't even know where to start. And yeah, I can go on a Google or interweb it, and that'll take me down a rabbit hole that next thing you know, that person may have just dropped 30 grand in modifications to a vehicle they needed to do zero to, other than learn how to drive it and get out and go have fun.
Because some guy on YouTube said he had to. Yeah,
exactly.
He got himself YouTube certified.
Especially these days, especially the Land Rovers, a lot of it is push button. That if you just don't know what things to press on the screen, you won't have a good time for sure.
To that point, funny story on that is that, so obviously all the Land Rover Defender boards that are on social medias, and I had a guy reach out and said, we just had our first snow, so I'm assuming he's down south. And what mode's best to use on the new Defender in snow? And I said, well, it depends on how much snow and what the texture of the snow is. You can start with grass, gravel, snow and see how that does with what we have up here. Like the other day we had, I think it was 8 inches that fell. I said, I use sand mode. It works great because we had that sugary style snow falling that mimicked sand. And you're going to wind up seeing that the way it controls your wheel speed and setting power and the differentials and everything like that work better for me, traction wise, than grass, gravel, snow. But I also said to him, I said, try them both out if you have a capability to do that before you get on the main road to work. Figure out which one works better, but you've got to learn how to press buttons. And it was funny. I had a trail ride with one of these Jeep clubs this summer, and I had this great woman who was a guest on my podcast. I think it was episode 4, because she has MS and her Jeep is her Jeep ability. It gives her the ability to go and do all the stuff that she can't do anymore because she has this debilitating disease, MS. And so she was behind me because we were in the middle of the pack because they were running it as a club. And I said, well, why don't we put her behind me so that I'll take the same kind of lines that I would want her to go on and all that. And there's this big rock ledge coming down. And she says, what am I supposed to do with these buttons on my dash? And I said, which ones? And she said, there's one that's just like sway bar release. And I'm like, we're going over some rocky stuff. Why don't you press it and see what happens? This is the time to press it and to play with it. We're basically on a green blue trail, or for those that are out west, right? That's a 1 to 5, somewhere in that range in terms of the scale. And I got out and spotted her anyways. But it's when you're in that kind of environment with your buddies, you have a new rig or you have a new button, if you just put in those ARB selectable lockers on your D2, which may or may not be happening to mine. This is the time to flip the switch and see what the heck happens, right? Do it. Why not? And
it's either going to change how the truck drives or it's going to darken your whole dash, one or the other.
things may go boom or
May release the magic smoke.
Exactly. Your ECU has a fritz and then the vehicle doesn't even know what it is anymore and shuts down. You're in a controlled environment, press the buttons, play with the car, see what happens.
Before you actually need them in a
Right.
serious situation.
That's one of my favorite things to do, back to your point, is press the button, see what happens.
So we finally got some good snow here for the first time in a couple of years, and I took out the LR3 because I could.
Exactly.
In snow. Well, let's see what happens. What do the buttons do?
And how did she do for you?
It does great.
Well,
I've fallen in love with the LR3.
It's a great rig. Now, did you adjust your SI at all?
No, I was just going out on the main road. Did the odd parking lot. If there was one, it was tough to find the parking lot.
Did you do the donuts in the parking lot?
No, I didn't go that far. Sorry.
Those are all the videos I'm seeing right now of everybody that I know back down in the land. I found a parking lot. And they're spinning their new Range Rover around. I'm like, that's going to be really good for you if you don't know that there's a curb under that snow. Have fun with it.
A lot of the folks down south are doing donuts just in the attempt to drive straight.
This is one thing I hated living down there was even on like a summer day, if you got a pop-up thunderstorm, forget it. It was like all common sense and skill, if there was any, went out the window. They can't even drive in rain, let alone you add 6-8 inches of snow. I was down there in the blizzard back in, let's see, when would that have been? The last big one they had about 6 years ago when the city shut down for 3 days and people were leaving their car on the highway. And I was coming back from my office in northern Atlanta, and you have to get on the ring road 285 to go around to where my community was. And I had this at the time, that was when I was in the avalanche. And I get to this one section of highway, and there's just also, there's a lot of cars all stopped, big rigs, everybody else, they're just idling. And then it was just empty. Nobody for 5 miles in the snow on that. It was just quick 4-wheel drive. And I just boogied all the way down. And then, of course, the worst part about it was all my buddies coming back to the community. I'm stuck like 4 miles from the community. I'm going to have to leave my car overnight. Can you come get me? We wound up having 6 people living, like staying in my house for 2 days as a result. People that couldn't even get north of our community because I would go out and pick them up and drive back. I can't believe you could drive through this. I'm like, yeah, I grew up in it. We understand snow.
But it's a good opportunity to test, as I think that's what this was all about. I saw Charles Bell was excited to get out because they had some down in Louisiana, of all places.
Yes.
And he was very excited to get out in the snow and drive. And then he actually posted one. I was like, where's the snow? It was like a dusting. Maybe an inch.
For them, that's a serious shut down the city blizzard kind of thing.
Yeah. I don't think they even have any snowplow or salting capability. I think Arkansas has one plow, if I'm not mistaken.
By the Capitol.
It's been broken for several years.
Honestly, it's a skid steer that they just go out.
There you go.
Oh my God. But it's funny because not only is it that 1/4 inch of snow, but they're all driving on racing slicks down there. So
Of course they are.
you really get to love it. But always good seeing when Charles is out with Brutus IV doing crazy stuff.
Absolutely. And he's doing it right.
He was with me in Big Bend National Park. He and I actually shared a campsite a couple times. I love Charles, and it was just so much fun being out there. And honestly, I mean, who doesn't love a special edition LR4? The thing is just immaculate. And, the guy who owns it obviously is a master tech, so it's going to be in perfect condition.
Yes.
I'm jealous of that car.
Yeah. I've actually called upon him a couple times for the LR3 to get some advice. Very helpful. But going back to your podcast, how do you define overlanding?
So overlanding to me is that you have a vehicle, and overlanding is that you want to go to places that are remote, off-grid, potentially, and you want to live outside in some form or fashion, whether it's tent camping, rooftop tent camping, car camping. And overlanding to me is a vehicle of any stripe, really. I've seen some crazy stuff when I've been up in the passes of Colorado, and you're coming around a corner on a shelf road with 8 Rovers, and all of a sudden there's a Toyota Camry. And you're like, how did you even freaking, I don't even want to know. And God help you, how are you getting down? But really, it's fun because I see folks do it in Evokes. I see folks do it in obviously Disco Sports, all the Rover platforms, but you get to see it in so many different forms and fashion, from Subarus to all the electric vehicles out now. Not as much on the true off-road overlanding because you can't go 5 days out in the bush without a charge, and solar panels just aren't going to do it. It's being in a vehicle, going to very remote places and being self-sustaining, cooking to sleeping is my general overview description.
Yeah, that's good because I think it means different things, different people. It's not really a settled term. Like I think even some of the van life people, they're mainly doing overlanding, but really on the road, staying at Walmarts and
exactly. In a sense, it's more of I'll call that more of an urban style in certain regards when you're doing the Walmart stuff, but you're still self-contained, right? You still have your cooking capability, you're still doing your sleeping in there, and you're still potentially, if you have that shower system, whatever it is, but you're living that way. And I think there's so many pieces to the overlanding because, again, you've got to know how to off-road. So you have to know how to drive, you have to know how to navigate, you have to know how to recover. Even if you're in a van lift, there are some phenomenal instructors I know that only deal with sprinter vans because, again, those only have 4 high clearance and their approach angles, breakover angles are just not, they're not.
Yeah, right.
And you
It's
take them on
aspirational.
quotes, air quotes.
Yes.
It's not like a Freelander, but with room inside.
Hey, whoa, slow down.
Hey, 3 liters are more capable, way more capable.
I would think so.
But you are running some of those roads, even if you're on the fire roads in Colorado or if you're over a Big Bend National Park. And there's no help for days. So it's being able to understand how to read that terrain, navigate, and more importantly, enjoy being off grid and out, waking up in nature, sleeping in nature, and doing that. I just think it's overlanding combines all those facets, whereas off-roading could be, we're just going out the wheel. And sure, we have the first 2 components there. We're using our Onyx system. So we've got our mapping given to us and we're going to go out with boys for 6 hours and then go drink or whatever it is. And overlanding to me is multi-day, hundreds or thousands of miles real remote.
And you're not returning to a home base at the end of the day.
Exactly. It's a pick up and move.
It's more nomadic, my assessment.
No, I completely agree. Out west, I'd say here in the Northeast, you have that ability to base camp more often. Still overlanding-esque. And you could do, if you did the BDR, for example, so if I wanted to start the BDR, which I actually am looking at doing a trip, we're going to start down in Pennsylvania. So we'll have to come hang out with you guys down at Fort Pitt because we'll have, I think, 4 rovers and we're going to do the BDR all the way up to Maine. It's yes, nomadic and that constraint. And again, beauty of that is it's wheeling the whole way. There's hardly any pavement and through some sections of Western New York and in Vermont, it's hardcore trails. There's some really hardcore trails. So we get to New Hampshire and it's just a dirt fire road. That's all we have up here in New Hampshire for the BDR.
We've got to focus and pay attention, sir.
Oh, no, 100%. I think that's the biggest thing is I had this discussion with somebody the other day related to hunting. If I'm going to go out and bird hunt, South Dakota, where I was a guide for a long time, guys would come in from all over the country to bird hunt. And you start at 8 o'clock in the morning and you go until the last bird shot, which is usually 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And there ain't no drinking and there ain't no stuff until you're done for the day. Off-roading and overlanding to me is the same. The amount of focus and you're responsible for the 6, 7, 8, or however many folks you're with. So you each are responsible for each other when you're out on the road, both from a safety standpoint, but also from a let's make the right decision. Maybe the road forks and we don't know which way to go and our GPS is down and hopefully somebody can read a map.
Or it's towards the end of the day and the sun's about to go down and you're in a Series 3 109 with maybe a candle power of light.
That and whoops, I broke something and we have to figure out how to fix this. And does somebody really, do I have one person in my group that actually has a clue on what we can do to FER this and keep going? And it's always good when you look at, I love the groups that go out where they have, somebody has a role. Like I had John Brady, who's an instructor at OEX, was on the podcast recently. He was talking about a trip. He was in Moab. They had a ER doc. They had 3 master tech mechanics with them. And these are just buddies. It wasn't like meant to be this way. They had 2 guys that were specialty trauma folks from the military. And they wound up coming up on a scene where a kid had rolled a side by side on a trail, dislocated his shoulder. And I think taken 2 fingers off. And they all went into what they knew how to do and operated the vehicle, blah, 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 blah. Got the kid life flighted out, the ER doc stabilized them and all that. And they had trail fixes on the way afterwards. And they fixed their vehicles on the way. And That's the fun part about it. It's not point A to point B, how quick can get there. These are the cool pieces and stories and memories. It's being at Winter Romp and being at 2:00 in the morning and we've submerged a 90 into an icy bath on Bright H.
We didn't do that.
Did not.
Come on.
People in our group
Fair. Thank you.
submerged a 90 in front of us on Bright Atrium. And the cool part was, awesome. I know it's -5 up, but how do we get this thing out? Let's do this and have fun. And those are the stories we get to tell. Did I care that were we originally planning on being out till 4 in the morning? No, we got out there at 10. So we're going to go for an hour.
Right. Let's go run a little trail in the snow and the cold. Yeah.
I rolled back into the hotel room. I think it was 4:05. And my wife was like, what time is it? She had clocked. And I said, it's 4:00 in the morning. She goes, holy cow. And she's like, when are we going again? I said, I think we're going to get up at 7 to go to Big G's for breakfast.
Yep. Big question for you on your podcast is,
Yes, sir.
Why are you not using your modern new Defender as the vehicle icon?
Because the simple answer is,
Did they copyright that design?
no, they didn't
Okay.
copyright that design. It's just the fact that when I created the logo for the podcast, being technically inept, I used a specific little online software program to do the logo. And we will eventually update it. We're working on some new logos now that we have the D2 and the 110. So we're trying to figure out, the guy actually who does my graphics stuff is from Vermont and has not only a D2 that's a pretty killer D2, but he also just added a L322 that he's about to put new bumpers on and also make that into an off-road rig. He gets the whole multiple model styles. We're going to recreate the whole STL logo and then try to figure out how to do it so that it makes sense with the podcast to kind of.
I was just having fun with you. I didn't realize there was actually a legit reason behind it.
There's a legit reason is that. And frankly, I've always loved a D90. Who doesn't love a D90? That to me is it's a cool rig. But
Ned's trained to think on his feet. So even if he didn't have a legit reason, he was going to come up with one to respond to your question.
you know me all too well, sir. That literally is the actual reason I was doing the software program to come up with what the logo needed to do. And I could get a hold of Mike to do logos, and that's where we wound up. But it's definitely going to push me to redesign that pretty quickly. Yeah, the podcast has been so much fun, and I've taken so much away from other podcasts. Like listening to all your episodes has been awesome for me. And also just because of the fact that you guys drop such great knowledge about Rig World and everything with Anarch and whatnot. It's really been a lot of fun because it's also given me the ability personally, like you were saying earlier, Harold, that I'm learning as well. I've learned a ton each episode from my guests. It's given me the ability to rethink some of the things I've done or am doing. It's just crazy. I was always worried, am I going to be able to get another guest on? I want to do this weekly during winter because I have the time, but slow up here. Our roads are closed. Need to occupy myself, but also want to be able to be productive and continue to learn. I'm 3 episodes recorded right now for future release. I never thought that would be something I could fall into pretty quickly. We've gotten one show sponsor, corporate sponsor through Lucky 8 right now, and we're talking to some others. It's crazy. I mean, 4,000 people have listened to our podcast.
Nice. Impressive.
I really had no idea. And the crazy thing is, as you guys, I'm sure, know better than I would from the analytics board of doing the podcast, when you go in and you start seeing your statistics, and I have 15 people listen to it in Germany. I have 60 followers from Canada. I have 3 people in Abu Dhabi that are following me. I'm sure they're just bots. You just seeing where it's getting its exposure is pretty neat.
Yeah, we have at least a listener on each continent.
That's cool.
Except for the 7th, Antarctica. We need someone at the pole to listen to us.
All right. So one of my club members is actually on his way down to Antarctica this week.
Wow.
To go
'Cause
down
we
for-
need to give him a sticker at the base and a picture.
That's true. We don't have that.
Send him a sticker, John.
I'll,
Express.
You know who it is? It's our friend that might have cracked his new 110 at the Pit of Despair last year. Were you there for that?
no, I was not.
Okay.
Okay.
We had gone through it on day one. I always go through it day one. I never go through it after day one because it
Right.
gets so rutted out. And we had told him that morning, don't go through again. And somehow or another, because I got a bunch of guys that I hadn't met before that came up to Rob. They're like, we want you to guide us through like some sections today. So I was like, so our other club members, I'm like, here, take him. He's our problem child, and make sure that he follows you. What was the first thing he did when he pulled out of the green? Right down to the Pit of Despair, hit the tree on the left at the bottom, and just blew out the front left headlight and quarter panel on a new Defender.
Oh,
Oh, it's the best way to get a kid to do something is tell him not to.
Exactly, except that he's older than I am.
Yeah,
you mean
maybe
physical age.
chronologically.
Physically, he is, but we probably battled mentally for that 12-year-old knucklehead stuff. But yeah, we'll get him to tune in from Antarctica. You can get that to Antarctica
Yes.
continent.
There we go.
We need
Your
that hits.
analytics.
We need that. When you were planning your podcast and thinking about it, did you have a thought in mind about how long your show was going to be each
That's
episode?
Great question. Originally, it's a good question.
Because we do, and we joke about it all the time. This is a 45-minute show.
The original plan, and there was a plan. It was going to be,
Yes.
this will be 45 minutes. Mhm.
Yes, no, we wanted it to be about an hour. It's always funny because when I go to record and I say to my wife, I'm going to record a podcast, she says, I'll see you in 3 hours.
Yep.
And then even after editing, I think I've had one episode be an hour long, and most of them, as you guys know, because some of those conversations just, when your guest starts rolling, you just want them to roll, and it's so good. You're like, I can't cut it out.
The guest segment's half of our show, and we're already at 2 hours just doing this tonight.
Yeah, I know that there'll be a fair amount cut. And
We've had some run to 4 and 5 hours. We had to split them into 2
Wow.
episodes.
Yeah, we err on the side of splitting into multiple episodes instead of cutting, because like it is for you, it's the guests and
Yep.
the experience and the stories for us, and there's not much to cut.
No, and that's the only stuff that I cut out of mine is either like when we screwed something up audio wise, or I've screwed something up, like it came out wrong, we had to reset it.
Somebody's microphone dies on them in the middle. And
Oh, yes, when my microphone dies, cut that out and we restart. Or there's been some, let's just say, discussion points that probably were best left for closed doors.
usually
Occasionally.
have to take some things off the
Yeah.
record.
Not
You
too
just
often.
don't want to have any of that out there for any reason, because there's just no bueno on that. Usually, I think at this point now, I've just gotten to the point where I'm like, they're going to be 2-hour app car. 15 and not up to listen to it.
And also, I think there's a lot of people that listen at a faster rate than just one.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
I don't know that my analytics able to capture that, but I listen to a lot of podcasts, and most of them are at least 1.5.
Yep.
And
I
it's the only
can't
way to get
stand
through
that
it.
personally. It just doesn't sound natural. But some people like that. And
Yeah.
it allows them to get more content in a given
Yeah.
amount of time.
Actually, there's some TV shows that I'm like, oh, can I listen to this at 1.5?
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, I had a DVR box that let me watch it at 1.5,
Oh.
but it mutes the audio when you do that.
Videos that I'm looking for in regards to, okay, this is how I change out the instrument cluster bezel on the D2, which mine is cracked and I've already got the part for it. And I'm like, it's a 3-minute or if it's a 10-minute video, and 6.5 minutes is this guy just. And I'm
Yep,
like,
just get to it.
Get me
Yes.
where the screws are. I just
Yes.
need the screws.
Disco Repairs by the Swedish Chef.
But if those are the ones where I'm like, God, if I could do this in 2 times, just get me right to that moment. I don't need all the crap
Right.
that you're leading with.
I do think on the, like we're staying audio, I have no desire to go video, but
Same.
I think it depends on the podcast application you use, how well it does that speed up. And I use Overcast, which I think does a great job, because there are podcasts I'm like, oh yeah, I don't have this at 1.5 because I can
Right.
tell you have that problem. Say, Harold, if you do want to try to listen, maybe use a different podcast application. There's your top tip.
At least stop listening to the auctioneering podcasts. Those are real rough at 1.5 speed.
I think you need a 0.75 on those.
You can do that. You can listen at less than 1.
That's awesome.
Ned, where can folks find you, find the podcast, and find STL Off-Road? Sorry.
You got it. No worries. The STL and off-road came from the fact, again, back to being a Star Wars nerd.
So it has nothing to do with St. Louis then, huh?
No, I know. And I have so many buddies who are like, why did you use the St. Louis airport code for your I'm like, you're too literal, bud. Instagram handle is at Stormtrooper Landy. That's what the white 110 is named, which has the big stickers on the side, along with the corporate logo. So that's how we came up with STL. It's just, again, I'm not a smart guy. I do things very simply. You can find us online. The website for the corporation is stormtrooperlandy.com. STL Off-Road on Facebook. And the podcast is available on Apple Podcasts and Spotify Podcasts as well.
So anywhere you can find podcasts.
Technically, yes. Thank you. So
Because I do listen to you through Overcast.
excellent.
Can
The
you get to it
podcast is-
from Stormtrooper Landy? Do you have a link to it from?
We do have links to everything is linked to each other, both the website to the socials. And then we have the full calendar of all of our upcoming clinics, classes, excursions, and events that we're doing on the website. And if you have a question for us, or you have a show suggestion, obviously info@Stormtrooperlandy is a great way to get a hold of us too.
And you're also a member of Dork.
I am the president of Dork, New Hampshire, which is
Oh, so you're the biggest dork.
Yes, I am referred to as King Dork sometimes, which I don't like. There's no such thing as a king, but yeah, head dork. Dork-nh.org if you're a Land Rover folk up in the Northeast and want to check out the club or come for a ride. We've got that going. And of course, the club is a member of Anarch. In fact, I believe I have to re-up our dues. I will take care of that. And outside of that, you can come see me sometimes when I'm teaching up at the Land Rover Experience in Vermont as well.
Ned, thanks very much for coming on the CentreSteer podcast. And welcome to off-roading, podcasting, Land Rover podcasting, whatever genre we're in.
Welcome to the party, pal.
Gents, it's been an honor. I've been listening to you guys, obviously, for quite some time, and really glad to have been invited.
Enough punishment. You had to start your own, huh?
Yeah, I figured these guys can do it.
Yeah. If we can do it, anybody can. I mean, you know.
Exactly.
That's exactly it. Yes.
What was it in the 80s? If give it to Mikey, he'll eat anything, right? Or he'll try anything.
That's
So,
right.
no,
That's
but
right.
seriously, thank you guys for having me on. It's been a blast hanging out, and just keep doing what you're doing. Love it, man. Keep it up.
We hope you enjoyed show number 142. Thanks to our guest this month, Ned Crystal. Be sure to find and subscribe to the Nuts and Bolts, the Overlanding podcast, wherever you find good podcasts, including this one. If you found this one, you should be able to find his, the Nuts and Bolts podcast. And also thanks to Harold and to Morgan for coming on the program yet again this month. Thanks, guys.
Yeah, sure.
$10 is $10.
And there we go. I knew someone had to say it. And of course, to the One True Pax for his continued production support. Did you spot the change in the audio quality for Ned Crystal?
Or did Pax catch it?
Questions. We don't know. I haven't sent him the files yet because he was out of the country. I will let him know, see if he picks up on
Voluntarily?
it. Yes. He also was on vacation.
He fled towards the end of the month so they wouldn't have to get our file.
Exactly. That's right. We post a new podcast at the end of every month. Our website, CentreSteer.com, has all our shows you can listen to, and also the show notes, which have links to the stories we discussed in today's podcast. You can directly support the podcast at patreon.com/CentreSteer. And if you do, you get access to 10 questions that we ask most of our guests. You can also buy a t-shirt, sticker, or even the tea/brown water. Thank you for listening. We'd love to hear from you and what you're up to in your Land Rover. And a special shout out to listener Charles Bell, because he got out in the snow down in Alabama this past week. I guess it was last week. It snowed in Alabama, and he got out in his LR4, and he was very excited to do that. So he got out and did something in his land.
That's probably the first time he's ever done that, right? It doesn't snow in Alabama often, so when it does, you have to go out.
Yes.
Don't you?
Yes, that's what I told him. He's like, yeah, I'm going out, and he did. He got out and had a really good.
At least if nothing else, it allows him to procrastinate on the shoveling.
So go out and do things in your Land Rover and let us know about them.
On behalf of our North American-based crew here at the CentreSteer podcast, I'd like to thank you for listening today. We know you have a choice when it comes to your podcasting content, and we do appreciate your choosing us. Please take a moment to look around you for any personal items you may be leaving behind, especially in the overhead bins. Remember, some items may have shifted during the show. If you checked a lightsaber at the gate, you may retrieve it in the terminal. Please raise your helmet visor so you can see more clearly going down the ramp. And you may now resume your important things. Ladies and gentlemen, we are experiencing technical difficulties. Please stand by.